Hello, everybody. I'm sorry for being late. I got caught up recording um, a video from a future series that I am doing on the history of the Federal Reserve banks. And my explanation went a little bit longer than expected. But now I'm here and I'm going to talk about unprolling myself and my journey on this, and also how can you unprol yourselves. I want this to be a interactive discussion. So if you have any suggestions, or if you want to ask how you can unprol yourself and explain your situation, feel free to join that in chats. Or if you want to ask me just any other general question like we do on these live streams about finance or economics or anything in that of interest, um, you feel free to feel to comment or ask your questions. However, I will take questions really starting after I kind of go through my introductory lecture, like I do with these live streams. And the other thing I would say is, if you want to make sure that your question is asked, please leave a super chat because I constantly miss otherwise great questions when I read these after I do close the live stream. And I want to make sure to see all of your questions too. Um, so that's kind of my intro comments, but let's kind of get to the core of this, which is unprolling myself. And like this is kind of be more of a, I guess, a game show style format, kind of like when we did that prol or no prol live stream a few months ago. But there are generally three ways to determine if something is considered prol. And the first one is, would the world be worse off or more tacky if everyone made the same decision? Is that decision scalable? Like any decision, whether it's good or bad, classy or prol, is not that consequential if only one person chooses to do it. Um, like the society will be just fine. But if everybody chooses to do that habit, or a large enough of a size of the population chooses to do that habit, does it make the world a better or a worse place, or a tacky or a more refined place? Um, like an example of this would be, um, I'm trying to think of a good example of this that's YouTube friendly. All right, so like a good example of this would be um, wearing socks with sandals. If one person wears socks with sandals, people might make comments that they're tacky. But if everybody did it, you would have a tackier society as a whole. Or another example would be, um, if um, if everybody decided to not to raise families outside of a married nuclear structure. Yeah, it can work if a few people, particularly a few wealthy people, do that. But if you had all of society take that on, it'd probably lead to much worse child development outcomes for an entire generation. Or like other example might be like if people chose not to take showers every day. If one person does, people will comment and maybe not want to hang out with them because they smell. But if it became a trendy thing for everybody, or a large, like 10-15% of the population to do that, then the world would be a tackier and a smellier place. So there, you can think of any example of this. Like if it's something that if a large enough scale of the population did, and we were worse off for it, then it is a pearl thing to do. Um, and so that's the examples really would be it. Whereas it's the opposite. If everybody did it and the world is a better place, then it's anti-prol. Like example with this one would be, say if everybody spent an hour before bed reading a useful nonfiction book, um, it'd make the world a lot more intellectual and intelligent place and inherently less pro. If one person reads a book before bed, doesn't really change much. But if you had that develop as a habit all across the board, then the world would be a less pro place. Other example would be, let's just say you made it a priority for men to wear collared shirts more often every day. Um, that would that make the world probably a more classy place versus people wearing graphic T-shirts or dressing in athletic wear everywhere all the time. So that's example really number one. And rule number one is whether something is pro or not. Rule number two, are you doing something out of genuine desire or cope for what you really want? If you are doing something because of your genuine like reasons and expression, you truly want to do it, if especially if there's no cost barrier to preventing you from doing this action, then it is less pro than doing something that you would have to do as cope for the fact you can't afford the more conventional or the more upstanding version of this activity. For example, like if you had an unlimited vacation budget, would you go to Pismo Beach? Would you go to Laughlin, Nevada? Would you go to um, the most budget parts of Southeast Asia? My answer is probably no. My answer is definitely no. But I'd assume for you guys, most of the answer would be no. Whereas the example, um, it's the opposite. Like if you choose a place you generally want to do. And the third one really would be, are you making a long vol or a short vol decision? And a lot of these aren't just pro or not pro. These are general. So like I understand the comment. Like I don't really think about every day whether something is pro or not. I think of more of this as, is this stuff that's actually going to improve or better your life? Um, so like that's the really the question. Like, and it's this, and if a society advance um, and improve because of it and be a better place and a more enjoyable place to live. And the pro drifting is kind of just a proxy of people choosing the short vol or the more suboptimal decisions in a collective way. Um, so I don't really think it needs to get into the minutia of all this, but I think nevertheless, I think to put some context is important. So back to rule three. Are you making long vol or short vol decisions? A long vol decision, and you're not familiar with options trading, is you are the one buying volatility, or if you're an insurance buyer, you are the one buying the insurance. Um, the exam, so and as a result, you are paying a premium now in exchange for the potential upside of a right tail outcome working in your favor. So the classic example of like a long vol decision is if you're a single guy is asking out an attractive stranger on a date. 9 out of 10, probably realistically more like 95 out of 100 times, it will not go anywhere. Either you'll get rejected or it'll be one date and done. But the 1% to 5% of the time it goes somewhere, you might have met your future spouse. The cost is a little bit of embarrassment for each time you get no, that's the premium you pay. But the long-term payout is hopefully a happy marriage. Like other examples of this would be applying to different jobs in your field, or putting your or like or investments in venture capital. Like most of them will not work, but one of them will work and will pay for all of the losses and more. The other side of this is selling vols, where you get a short-term benefit for a long-term pain. Um, if it goes against you and the left tail happens. So this is like selling an option. You sell a put option on a stock, and you'll collect the $5 premium hypothetically as long as the stock doesn't drop below a certain price. But if it does drop a certain price, you have to pay all of the collective losses below that certain level. And so examples of this is driving without your seatbelt in real life. Like if you drive without your seatbelt, 99% of the time you'll be fine. In fact, it might be a little bit more comfortable than driving with a seatbelt. But the time that you get in a car accident or have to hit the brake a little bit extra hard or have to make like a sharp turn or something, um, the seat not having the seatbelt will cost you your life or at least probably severe injuries that get you sent to the hospital. The example is eating donuts. If you eat donuts every morning for breakfast, um, in the short run, you get some extra joy in your life because donuts generally taste good. But if you do that every day, um, you'll eventually get a heart attack. I don't think if you eat a single donut is going to cause you a heart attack. But if you do that eventually, you don't know which donut, whether it's donut number 1,000 or donut 2,000 or donut 50,000. But eventually, that behavior will eventually lead to you getting a heart attack or some other long term or some other disease. Then you don't know which one it's going to be. So, like picking up pennies from the steamroller is a great example of selling vol behavior. And a lot of hedge funds lose money by selling premium options for events that they think have 0% chance of happening, but have a lot more than 0% chance happening. And the tail happens and they get crushed. So, really, kind of to the bottom line of this whole discussion here is whether something is prol or not comes down to really three traits. Would the world be worse off or more tacky if everybody made that same decision? Is it a positively scale or is it a negative scaling decision on a society level? Point two, are you doing it out of genuine desire or cope for something you really want but cannot afford or cannot access for whatever reason? Or three, are you making a long vol or short vol decision? Are you making a short term sacrifice or pain for a long term gain or a short term pleasure for a long term decline or making you more exposed to a negative long term tail that you cannot recover from? So that's kind of the answer of how to determine whether something is prol or not. So now I'm going to get into some ways I probably need to unprol myself because I'm not a perfect person. Um, and everybody struggles with prol drift to a certain degree. And probably the first one that I could work on that I'm in the process of working on is improving the way I dress. I generally have a very California casual dress code, and I try to look nicer for my videos as well as when I speak live at the events on the tour. But more often than not, a lot of the times I will probably I'll wear like shorts and a t-shirt to places I probably shouldn't be wearing shorts and a t-shirt or just dressing casual, especially when I'm not out in public. And so, yeah, that's what's it called? That's one probably thing I can work on. The other thing probably is just general improvement of my health and improving the way I enunciate words and pronunciations. Like there's a lot of things I've read in books and I've seen in text, but I haven't really heard said verbally. And I will just make up my own pronunciation based on how it reads out, not phonetically. And I've noticed that in some of my videos of me not pronouncing things correctly. The other thing is that especially as I've um, all right, so we got a super chat. And also, do you guys like me going into the details of me how I can unprol myself, or do you want to get straight to Q&A? Because I'm seeing in some of the comments that you don't want me talking about how I can unprol myself. So if you want me to skip that and just go straight to the Q&A, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I will keep going. High fence hunting of African animals in safari is a massive pro drift, which is also commoditized and cheapened the African safari experience and trophy hunting. I'm not really familiar with this. I thought like the whole idea of trophy hunting is you have to go out into like in a Jeep maybe, and you walk around with a guide and you have to go out hunting in the natural habitat. Do people really just stand on high fences and shoot down? That again, it kind of seems like easy mode, which by this definition is kind of relatively pro versus challenging yourself directly. Um, so yeah, good call. And thank you for the support. Um, let's see. But back to the unprolling myself, because it seems like you guys want me to keep going with individual examples. I wrote a lot of them for this chat. One is general health reforms, but I think like more consistent sleep schedule, more consistent eating schedule, particularly not eating when I'm standing up, because I think that might be bad for my long term digestive health, and clean up my general diet and get into better shape. There was like a stretch when I had to work extra hard for my business that I did not focus on fitness as much. And I've leveled off since, so I haven't made the problem worse. But like I want to my long-term longevity, I want to live to 110 plus is a priority of mine. So I kind of need to go back into getting myself back to where I was before I had that stretch that I got super busy with things. Um, Next, really thing outside of my health and enunciation and my dress is I need to speak in a way that is more clear with how I explain things and a little bit less off the cuff. I still want to be authentic, but at the same time, I could come off as obtuse and maybe a little bit misrepresent what I'm meaning to say. The other thing is I need to improve on, and all of us should do this. I'm going to go more into this in my networking video that I am going to release in a couple weeks. Is developing my mental Rolodex. Um, like I don't know if you're familiar with Rolodexes, but this old thing that is even outdated when I was young. That was just like a rolling set of cards that you could keep track of everybody in your network. And you want to keep a mental Rolodex because there are a lot of people who you can help without knowing that you can help them. Especially if you're out in the community a lot. If you can make referrals to two like parties who may not directly need you or benefit from you, it helps you a lot in terms of people think of you as a potential referral partner in the future, or you have a reputation of being somebody who tries to connect and help people in the community. Um, let's see. Here's a super chat. In a Discord chat, the NASDAQ bottomed at 23,666 before Good Friday. Um, and he said it was an anti-Semitic. I don't really see how a stock price action is anti-Semitic. It's just a number. That just seems like somebody who's just over analyzing things, to be quite honest. And that's how I would say it. It's like that's over analysis. I mean, assuming you're acting in good faith and not adding other weird dog whistles or things in that, which I assume you are. But yeah, I mean, I would just not that seems like a Discord group not worth participating in, really, from my perspective to those kind of things. Again, but there are the other times you could go the opposite way, but in your case, that's kind of how I don't really know if I would respond to it that way. It's just it is what it is. You're just talking about a trade. And 666 is also a Christian thing in the book of Revelation. I don't think it has anything to do with Judaism necessarily. But yeah. Next thing, back to the digital the mental Rolodex. But yeah, you should always want to keep track of how you can help other people help each other. It makes the world a better place. It will often help advance your own personal goals too at the same time. Um, yeah, the next tattoos seem to be like the biggest pearl drift of my lifetime. I'm in general agreement with you on that. I think it is a major sign of pearl drift, and I've already talked about that in my videos on the subject. But um, let's see. The next thing I would say is I'd probably try to improve the way that I have a cleaner shave. Like, I have a very thick beard because of my Portuguese descent, and it always looks like I have a 5 o'clock shadow no matter what time of the day I shave. And I've tried to figure out how a way to do it that I can be cleaner without cutting my face too much. And I have not really found the right balance about that. So, um, that's probably another way I can unprol myself and update my etiquette education in general. I did cotillion over 20 years ago when I was in my preteen years, but I haven't really updated it since then. And so I might be doing some etiquette things wrong that I have not noticed. Some people in my personal life have called me out sometimes on these misses, but I need to look out and see like what is just their personal preference versus what is a real etiquette faux pas. And the other real thing I can do is take a more direct leadership in my family and think more multi-generational and extend beyond my nuclear short term in terms of incorporating my family and my future family into longer term goals. Like the example is I want to revive like a long-term family reunion that we used to have that kind of died after the pandemic. And that's kind of that's what's it called? One other thing is to what and a lot of this stuff I won't be able to do all the time just because the life is about choosing priorities. There's only 24 hours in a day, and you can't literally do everything. So you have to kind of tackle these one at a time. And that's one of my other things I want to do is I like once you're at my age, I'm in my 30s, and like you can't just always put off something to be like, I'll do it someday. I'll do it later. Um, the you have to put all the things in your long-term bucket list on the calendar. Maybe if it's 5 years from now, but it's got to be on the calendar, whether that's you want to write a book, whether it's you want to start a business, whether it's you want to travel to a certain place or try a certain hobby or have a family. Like you have to you have to plan for those things because if you don't make deliberate plans, often you'll just always put it off to later until that later never comes because you're too old or too frail or too busy with other commitments. So I think that's another thing I can improve on is that there's a lot of things on my mind that I want to do. I'm pretty good at doing a lot of them, to be quite honest. I think I've lived a pretty eventful life for somebody my age, and I've accomplished a lot of the things I've wanted to do and experimented with a lot of the creative outlets that I've wanted to do. But there's always more I can do. How to deal with toxic family and friends. Well, in what way? Like, what's the specific issue? Because um, I think that they're different. There's lots of different ways that people can be toxic. So um, it's it's kind of a tough answer. Um, and I don't think having a beard is prole. I just think that like um, I don't want to look like that. I'm just as lazy and didn't shave. Like if you're gonna grow a beard, you need to grow it thick enough that like it's an actual beard, if you know what I mean. And I did do that in 2021 to cover up a scar from a surfing accident. But I personally thought I didn't personally just didn't like beards from a more personal preference, so I ended up shaving it off. But yeah, if you're gonna have a beard, as long as it's well groomed, it's not prole. I just want to make that clear. Um, as long as it's well kept. The other really thing is, I would say, is um, I got this is more of a philosophical thing, but I have to assess whether my convictions and beliefs are genuine or a product of my class upbringing or my personal circumstances. Like, I think a lot of my ideology is somewhat influenced by the fact that I grew up in a multi generational family of small business owners. Doesn't mean my ideas are wrong. They could be right on an absolute basis too, but I would not say that it's necessarily. I can't say that I was influenced by that part of my life. And the other thing is, yeah, I want to bring back certain traditions and events that I always intended to do, but just didn't put time in it. Like examples of this is that for my house, I'd like to buy I like 26 different wooden shields that are about maybe like this big or so, of one for each Swiss canton, and put them in front of my fireplace. I don't have a fireplace right now, but if I had a fireplace or a mantle or whatever in my living room, my grandma had that in her cabin, and it was always something I wanted to. I tried to find them in Zurich, but I couldn't really find them. I found a few stained glass ones, but they were too fragile and expensive to ship. So if anybody knows like somebody who can make me custom wooden plaques for all of the Swiss cantonal flags, reach out to me. And also the person who said they would reach out in the comments of the last one of these, who would help me make the conditional forms for the tour, feel free to contact me directly as well. You can do that from my website or via the email that is posted on this channel. And I think that wealth is not equal to class, but wealth gives you like the resources and the time, often the flexibility to be able to make living a classier life easier. And yeah, in general, I want to live a life that's consistent with my values, and I want to be the change that I want to see in the world, and figure out what the bigger purpose. That's the last one. Is I want to figure out what the bigger purpose for all the projects that I am doing in my life is. I'm not really entirely sure of it, but I know there is one. And the other thing I could probably do is cut time off on mindless entertainment. I mean, I've my consumption of sports and video games and internet culture is a lot less than it used to be. But until I'm getting consistently everything I want done in a day, there's probably more room to cut out entertainment out of my time budget. And with that, that's kind of generally my ways I feel like I can unroll myself. And that's a lot really in its own sense. And all of us really can, I think, work on improving ourselves in different ways. And now I'm going to open up the conversations to Q&A. And before I get to your questions, and while you guys are writing your questions, I am going to just do a few housekeeping announcements for just the channel as a whole. First, if you want like to be part of access to my full reading list, and as well as have updates on videos and events and stuff, I recommend checking out my Substack. And I got a super chat first. Nick, your knowledge is invaluable. Any advice on starting a med spa? I really don't have much advice about starting a med spa, sad to say. I mean, like I have general business advice and entrepreneurship, but there's probably a lot of regulatory and zoning issues with med spas that I don't know about. I don't really know how profitable they are because it's an industry haven't really followed that closely. So I don't really want to give you random advice that may or may not be helpful. I try to um, add value where I can, and that's kind of a healthcare industry in general is probably something I'm relatively lacking in my knowledge, and particularly med spas. Um, yeah, another example would be other in terms of other housekeeping things. We had a great meetup in San Francisco and a lunch in Fresno, as well as a dinner in Montecito, but the tour is not over. We have um, 6 stops left on the tour, at least for the first half of the year. The next one is I'm coming to Toronto a week from today. On April 9th, I will be speaking in Little Portugal in Toronto, and also having a private dinner after. Like, if you're interested in coming to the private dinners, we have, I think, 5 of them left. You can apply via, yes, I will reply to the email if it's something worth replying to. Like, I sometimes get spam messages. It's worthwhile to reply to. I do reply to the email in the channel. But yeah, the form I just posted the link for is if you want to apply to one of the private dinners, this is how you do it. I have applications so I could have a general idea of know who you are before agreeing to have a relatively small dinner with you. Um, the next thing meetup we're having is on Boston. I'm coming back to Boston. It'll be Saturday, April 11th. And then we will be in New York City. The private dinner, I ended up moving just to the right after the meetup at 8:45 p.m. The whole and the event will be on, and the dinner will be on Tuesday, April 14th in Manhattan. And then I will be heading to Atlanta. Atlanta will be Thursday, April 23rd. Um, and then we will be having our next meetup, and our only one probably in the Midwest this year, will be in Chicago. And that is on Saturday, April 25th. And then we will be having an event in Dallas on April 30th. And this is a Thursday. And then we will be having a private dinner the night before on the 29th. And actually, we're going to have a second one in the Midwest. I almost forgot. We're having a special, like more informal gathering in Kansas City, Kansas on May 3rd, which will be the celebration of me visiting all 50 US states within my lifetime. The fact that I hit 40, I think, is a little nice little accomplishment. So if you want to come join and celebrate that with me in Kansas City, I will be doing that on the 3rd of May. And those are really all the scheduled events that we have for this year. I'm taking a break due to some things in my personal life going on this summer until August, but we will be coming to Denver, Colorado, as well as Beaver Creek, Colorado in early August. And then I'll also be having a meetup in Santa Cruz, California at the end of August. And if you want to vote on where I go in the future, I just posted the form of where you can do that. And then I'm also planning a international tour for 2027. And I need to have in advance more reservations and figure out a way to help people preserve their spots, because it's a lot more logistically complicated and a lot more costly for me to do these international stops. So I need to have a higher floor of people who want to come to them. The only ones that are going to be for sure are going to be Punta del Este, London. Now that the British police have changed their rules, they don't go after social media anymore. I'm going to have the event in London, and Paris, and Milan, and 4 Swiss cities will probably be on the schedule for sure. But if we want to expand it beyond those locations, um, I will create a system for that, probably starting in June, to help people reserve in advance. And then here's the form if you want to reach out to me for general consultations, or if you have specific questions that are more personal and direct, because I can't talk about any specific thing, particularly in specific investment advice on these live streams. If you want that, please find an advisor, do your own research. And if you want to ask me about it, just contact me directly. And then I also started an X and an Instagram for my shorts. I'm not putting all my short form content on there. So if you want to see that, go to X, and my Instagram is at AF with Nick. And with all the housekeeping out of the way, now let's get to your guys' questions directly. So let's see. Is popular music prolish, like rock and roll? I mean, it depends on a few things, like what are the lyrics of the music? Is it just noise pollution, or is it good? I mean, there could be any good and bad music of really any genre, but it's something you can it's kind of like an obscenity. You can tell when music is pro and when it's not. There's not like any fixed definition for it, but it's kind of an intuition thing. Gen Alpha here. Am I fried, cooked, and chopped? No, I think Gen Alpha is actually going to have a much easier and better life than Gen Zs and Millennials. I think Gen Zs will have a much easier and better life than Millennials. I think Millennials, unfortunately, are going to end up being like an economic and social sandwich generation that had to eat the pain for the cost of bad policies of generations before. But in general, I think that every generation is still going to have a better life than the previous generations. With, unfortunately, I think maybe the millennials might be a sad exception to that. So no, you're not cooked. I got a super chat here. In your fixing public schools live stream, you said that you may consider creating a school. Now that marriage is on the horizon, have you thought more about it? I think you could do it. Your ideas on fixing education are great. Yeah, it's definitely on the table. I know I don't think I'd want my future wife to be a homeschool teacher. I really think that I'd rather have more professionally qualified teachers as part of my plan. I think her talents can be used for, quite frankly, other things. But I do want to have this more collaborative school. And once, like, I would say that my first kid is born, because I won't need the school for another 4 to 5 years at least until after then. I will start recruiting other families and teachers who want to be part of the project because this is something I want to do. I want to create the Pardini School of Critical Thought. It's just, and so like if you are somebody who lives in Southern California and wants to be part of it and one of the founding families, reach out to me and I could put you like on a list of people to contact when the time comes. So yeah, it is definitely something I still want to do. Um, yeah. Would you consider avant-garde music pro, like 70s progressive rock? Um, yeah, same thing with music in general. I think there it's like there can be pro versions of every music and there can be there can be non-pro versions of every genre of music. I don't think the genre inherently makes it pro. There are some genres that are more predisposed to being pro for a variety of reasons, but it's not necessarily guaranteed. Um, yeah, Brian, I know your daughter hit 50 by 5 years. She might have the record. Like, do you have an idea of what the record is for the youngest person? I mean, I assume your daughter's probably up there somewhere on that. So you beat me to the punch on this, even though I had a quite a bit of a head start when you got serious about it. How can I develop a better IQ? I mean, there's a lot of IQ is genetic. Others is part of early childhood education. So if you're above a certain age, it might be limited on what you can do, but you can make yourself just smarter by building your long-term memory and applying certain and just educating yourself overall. So you can maximize the IQ points that you do have. Um, why can't people just listen to what they like, prol or no prol? I mean, they can. Um, that I never said they couldn't. People can choose to listen to pro music if they want, but you might get certain judgments for it from others, and you might just and also you just yeah, it just is what it is. Like I'm not like there's no really nobody stopping you. In the US, is it hard for professional men in their 30s to find women from a similar background if they're in the South or the Midwest? I'm a single UK doc moving to the US for residency training in July. Like, what is your goal? Do you want somebody who's also from the UK and you live in the US? That might be a little bit more challenging. I think for men in their 30s, as long as they've have their act together otherwise and have been working on improving their lives, actually probably have more opportunities for dating than they did in their 20s. So I don't think it's necessarily an end game. You just might have to be you actually have more options when you're in your 30s, a lot of reason, like dating men the same age as them or older than them, where it's the reverse for men. So men start out with relatively lower opportunities in their youth and more as they get older, partially for that reason. And yeah, you just have to also be more proactive because as you get older, you tend to be more set in your ways and have more of an idea of what you want, which helps you filter faster, but also fewer people will fit the filters. Hopefully that answers your question. Um, let's see. Are you a history fan? Thank you for the super chat again. There's a thing called Latin Vulgate, which is basically the devolution of High Latin, which is what's used in the Catholic Church, I think, which is effectively um, to the prole of language. Um, yeah, I am a big history fan. Like outside of finance and economics, the biggest topics I like to learn about are geography, history, um, and the intersections of those with economics. So, yes, I would definitely say so. And yeah, like you can argue by that definition, every Romance language is a vulgar version of Latin, whether that's Italian, French, Romanian, Portuguese, Catalan, Spanish, uh, Romansh, and even English because it's a mix of Germanic language and Latin. But I mean, that happened so long ago that Latin is effectively a dead language outside of the TLM masses and the Catholic Church. So I wouldn't really say it's prol anymore. Thank you, Grant, for the super chat. I appreciate it. Nick equals goat. Let's see. Would you say the divide gap between the working class for the professional class is much wider in the US versus either Germany or France? Yes. And that's not because necessarily that the working class in the US is poorer or worse than it is in Europe. It's probably the opposite. I think your average working class person probably has a better life than their equivalents in Europe. But it's probably more stressful than their lives in Europe because there's not as much guaranteed protections. However, the reason that there is because the professional class incomes are much lower in Europe. It's like this whole idea of like the percentiles. Like you see this all the time, like, oh, Europe has more social mobility because it's easier to move from the 20th percentile to the 80th percentile or the first fifth percentile to the first. Well, if you ever bothered to look at what the income level is to be in the top 19th percentile, so basically guaranteed in the top quintile, the 19th percent income in the US is well over six figures. It's probably close to 120 to 150K. Whereas that same number in Europe is 60 to $80,000 depending on which country you live in, and 60 to $80,000 is the mid tier. So basically, and what's the bottom tier in Europe? It's about $30,000 a year. So the move from 30 to 80 is significant, but it's not. It's a lot easier to move from the bottom to the top quintile than it is in America, where the bottom quintile is under 20,000 a year, and the top quintile is six figures and beyond. So it's a very different. So I think all the idea of Europe having more social mobility is is not true. And then on top of that, it excludes the old money and the inherited wealth and the real right tail. Like the chance of getting into the top 1% from a middle class background in Europe is way lower than in the United States. That's the um, my take on that as well. The next question is, Nick, what do we get from your live meetups? Well, if you come to the live meetup, there is usually at least I'll have a speech that I will do customized for your city. Generally speaking, I upload a lot of them on YouTube, but the Q and A's remain off YouTube because I want it to be fully authentic, and so you can ask your questions that you would want to that you wouldn't be able to in other environments. So I do a speech, and then I have a long Q&A section after the speech, and sometimes I bring on second speakers with me um, to supplement it, and it's usually like an expert subject matter. Sometimes it's my colleague Murphy, sometimes it's other speakers that have a little bit different approach but still have very interesting and relevant topics. And then the other thing we do is this networking and meet and greet among all the people who are there. And that's kind of what you get from the events. And then we also have private dinners where after the events, where people, a group of usually about like 5 to 10 people will meet for dinner and continue the conversations. Um, so that's what the question is. Would you consider coming to Colombia anytime soon? Probably not. Um, I do plan on coming to South America, but it's probably going to be much further south, like probably Chile, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay. Um, so those are how politically incorrect can you get at one of your speeches? Um, I can get politically incorrect. Um, I mean, I'm pretty authentic on YouTube, but like Yeah, I will say more politically incorrect things when there's no camera, when there is one. Um, Hi Nick, would you come to Thailand? Probably unless if I had a huge audience in Bangkok that would want me to have an event that it would make like sense for me to do it, probably not. Um, like I floated the idea of doing events in East Asia, but it doesn't seem like we have the audience at that part of the world to be sufficient for events. The only city that kind of got close is Singapore, and I can't do an East Asia tour with just one city in it. So yeah, if I had a bigger audience in that part of the world, perhaps. Would you come to Mexico? Um, I would consider going to Mexico. I have to. So the safety situation is what concerns me, to be honest. Like if you have like explosions at airports that I have frequently flown through, such as Guadalajara and Puerto Vallarta, it makes me a little bit more alarmed than I would otherwise. Um, if the safety situation becomes more clear, I would definitely go to Mexico. 'Cause I think it's a great country to visit. I'd want to do a meetup one day in Zapopan and in Mexico City, um, but and possibly Monterrey and possibly Puerto Vallarta. But I have to closely monitor the security situation before I decide to go back there. Um, let's see. What are your thoughts on postmodernism as a lens to analyze the world? I think it is a lot. I think postmodernism is a way to justify a lot of these people had very troubled personal lives. And so, and views and socially unacceptable in their era. And they wanted to make the morality of those um, equal to and equally valid to the more conventional ways of living. And I think that drove a lot of um, the logic, for lack of a better term, behind postmodernism. And I think that saying that everything is meaningless and it's just the absurdist kind of worldview, and the only reason why certain views are propagated is based on projection of power is not. I think there is absolute truth. So I generally am not a fan of postmodernism. Um, would I come to Iran? No, because it's a battle zone right now. It's not safety is a concern. Um, and I think maybe I'm being trolled because I'm seeing like a lot of questions for relatively dangerous countries being asked here. So, um, yeah, how much would you charge for the school? Well, I mean, I think I would charge each family, whether you have one kid or like five kids, just like the salary of a teacher for that year. Like, because it's gonna because we're gonna need a certain amount of teachers to run this thing, and that might be how we do it. Or it depends how many teachers we need. If we can run the whole school with five teachers and have 10 families, maybe it'd be half the salary of a teacher. So I have to get into the economics. It's basically whatever the cost structure is divided by the number of families. I'm not trying to make money off of this school. What is the average age range of your meetups? Mostly millennial and older Gen Z. Like there are a few like more college students who come. There's also like occasionally a few 45, 50 plus people, but the average like the median age range is 25 to 42. Um, let's see. Is being concerned about your safety prole? No, absolutely not. I would not say so. I think that um, if that was the case, why do the elites hire private security? Let's see. What's your view on Argentinians? Are they going to be able to reach some level of power in terms of being a player on the global stage? What about its people? Well, I think what Malay is doing is a step in the right direction. If they can dollarize their economy and have some check to economic populism, I think Argentina has the potential to ascend. It's got a relatively well educated population, it's got a lot of natural resource wealth, and it's in a geopolitically safe part of the world. I mean, it should be a lot more of a powerful country. Like it should like it has the same economic fundamentals as like Canada does, but it's a lot less developed. And I think that's mainly due to its economic populism. So I think you can at least get to Canada level if their government would um, reform itself in a way to be more financially responsible. Um, let's see. Are you planning to fire? Absolutely not. I think fire is kind of a pro drift behavior in a way because there is one inherent thing you have to do if you're going to fire, and that is you have to not have children. Like, I don't think like the cost of having a kid in the modern economy, whether it's bigger housing, paying for college, etc., basically makes fire unviable. And I don't consider fat fire to be fire because that means you've earned enough money that you could live a good life conventionally and retire. I think fire is part of fire is lifetime of economic austerity. Um, so yeah, what is your the best way to get rich for those that are below 30? Uh, you mean that you will be rich before 30? I mean, you should try to go play in the tech world and hopefully you have the startup that gets bought out, but that's scalable for most people. It's usually going to take you a lot longer than that, to be honest. I mean, you could watch my video that I did, How to Become Rich, which I mentioned the whole steps on what it'll take for you to become wealthy as a self-made person. The problem really is that it will probably take you a lot longer to get rich than you want, but that is kind of just how life works. And here's that video for this. And what is FIRE? FIRE is financial independence, retire early. It's this idea that you work a very high paying tech job for a few years. And if you're married, your wife does too. You save all the money you can. You live as cheap as possible, often would be considered like a poverty like lifestyle. So you can build up your savings. And then you have a certain nest egg that you can move to a cheaper cost of living place and live off your investments at a very young age, like like and as early as 30 and up to about 40. And you just indefinitely just live off of your investments and live a very frugal lifestyle. So that's what fire is. I think it's flawed because one, it assumes inflation never goes up, and inflation often blows up fire strategies, especially due to the nature of rate going up slower than inflation does. So your increased yields don't justify the increased price level, and also it often is implied be a child-free lifestyle because having kids is often financially prohibitive for those who are on the fire life. So let's see. Um, are tattoos pearl drift? I already answered that question. Let's see. If a man is unmarried, would you personally not want to associate with them? Why would I not want to associate with unmarried people? First, I'm not married yet. Second, once I get married, doesn't mean that my unmarried friends and family members are all of a sudden persona non grata. I think maybe there are certain things that if you want to not associate people, it's because their ethics don't align with you or their values don't align with you, and they're not. And maybe, and this is not assuming people have to be morally perfect. Like if they're working on fixing the things that their sins, yeah, you can still be friends with people who are flawed. But it's like I don't really it doesn't make sense to abandon your friends once you get married because you're unmarried. They might not want to hang out with you because it may be less fun for them to be around married couples, but yeah, I don't think there's any virtue of abandoning people. Um, Nick, the prominent YouTuber Tom Bilu has said over and over the zip code you're born is the number one indicator of your future wealth. Thoughts? Um, I mean, I think it might be true on the national level. Like what country you're born in often influences your wealth, but I mean, you can't I think there's enough opportunity out there in this country that even if you're not born in the most favorable zip codes, you can be successful. You don't have to be born in Newport Beach or in the wealthy suburbs that I've mentioned in these videos to have a good life. Um, I think a lot of people who, especially if you made your money in a way that's considered fluky, like this is very common with Hollywood actors and professional athletes. Well, not less the professional athletes because they actually have to work hard to move up the ranks in high school and college. But if they made money was kind of considered more of like a chance, they tend to have more socialist economics and less belief in individual agency. And I think personal agency is the number one indicator for success, not necessarily where you were born. I think it's easier in a place with a higher zip code because you have better education and probably a better family. It's implied. Like if your family was able to afford to live in the higher zip code, it means you probably have more likely to have a stable two-parent household. You're more likely to have a better education and a variety of other better health outcomes and better other things. But I don't think if you place the same family in a different zip code, I don't think the outcome would be that necessarily different. I don't think the zip code is what makes you successful. I think the zip code might be a symptom of other things that lead you to be successful. Good question, though. Um, well, who cares about care? That's why these views on these videos are high and why I keep getting requests to talk about it. So um, somebody cares. Let's see. And it's an interesting topic when you dive deeper into it. Um, is being a leftist or supporting any kind of wealth redistribution pearl drift? Um, it depends on your reasons why, to be quite honest, for that. And I think envy politics is a pearl drift, and I think just weaponizing envy is pearl, or just it's because it's bad for everybody. Like if everybody had envy politics or did things out of envy, the world would be a much worse place. So yeah, does it violate the infinite scalability rule? If the answer is yes, then that answers your question right there. Um, let's see. Our fathers have different via surrogate, the opposite of pearl drift. I mean, out designer babies, that's a whole nother thing. And I think that might be the future class battle for the 2050s and beyond. Like our current class elite counter elite battle is the entrepreneurial elite versus the credentialed elite. And now I think the next generation will be the entrepreneurial elite being the old guard, and the new guard are going to be genetically modified versus natural born people. Um, yeah, I think that's going to be a potential conflict in the future. Are you concerned about America possibly ceasing to be a global hegemon, considering that your money is in dollars? Are you hedging for this in any way? Um, yeah, I don't think that America is going to lose its power because I don't see a country that can take it from them at this point. The way you lose that is by losing a war against another major power. I think America, if I had to put in historical perspective, is more at the fall of the republic stage more than the fall of the empire stage. So I think the next power could be America, but just under a different form of government. Like it won't like our system might just be completely different, but it'll still be the same geography and the same people, kind of like what Rome transferred from republican to imperial. I did a whole reaction series to Ray Dalio where I go into this very idea about the whole changing world order. It's like a three-part video series that took um what's it called, about 45 minutes each for me to do. So that's like a 2-hour film essentially about this very topic of rising and falling powers. And I'm going to post a link to part 1 here and you can watch that. What is your view using gold as a barometer for inflation rather than CPI or PCE? Um, I think it depends on what your starting point is, because if you use the starting point for 1971, when gold was already artificially held before the price level, it'll make inflation look a lot worse if you use the starting point as 1980 when gold was at a cyclical peak. So that's like the problem with using gold as an analysis. But I think in long enough time frames, gold can be a better proxy for inflation. I actually run my own in-house CPI indicator, which I call Pardini CPI, to get a better idea of inflation. I'm going to be talking about it in a future video because I think the way that CPI is constructed is horribly flawed and is understate. I think it's understating inflation, but the discrepancy wasn't that bad until how the CPI understated inflation until 2000, 2001. Before that, it was close in line with the government numbers, based on my alternative data, but you started to see a bigger divergence starting with the housing bubble. Um, let's see. What's it called? Was the banning of eugenics pearl drift? No. Will the US dollar value fall versus what? Other currencies, gold? I mean, I think the dollar isn't a, and again, nothing I say in this is investment advice. Please do your own research or due diligence. And if you need help with specific investment related things, please contact an advisor. And if you have questions for me about your investments or portfolios or any sort of financial related stuff, um, fill out the consultation form and set up a time to talk privately. Um, as for the dollar, I think we're in year 4 of a 7 to 10 year bear market versus other currencies. And you can watch my video about the history of the US dollar cycles, where I went more into my argument for that. It's a video I did called Every Dollar Cycle Explained. Um, that goes into that. And I think the other way you can manage it is investing in international stocks or companies whose income is not denominated in USD. Are you worried about the price of oil remaining over $100 a barrel? What could be the second order effects would concern you? I think the political consequences are what concern me. Like oil, the world is a lot more energy efficient than it used to be. Like when we had the last oil shock in like 2007. So I think the US can withstand it. I think less than half of miles driven are for commuting, and also work remote makes it so that like it's not, the demand is not as inelastic as it used to be. So I think their second order effects is I think the golden age of tourism that we've had basically since 2010 to present might be ended because of this. Like air travel is probably going to get a lot more expensive, and affordable air travel is what's driven a lot of um, increased vacations of going abroad. It's in, a lot of movements are built on it. Like the whole like digital nomad lifestyle is built on the back of cheap air travel. The passport bro movement, given my despite my criticism of it, was built on the back of cheap air travel. And a lot of other things like long distance dating is another example built on the back of cheap air travel. And so if you have air travel becoming less affordable, people will have their vacations and their free time and be more closer to home. Um, so I think that might be another implication. I think is the other implication really would be political. If you have oil prices last this long, it could cause a recession because people whose budgets were already break even before this oil shock now have to pay higher energy costs or just higher gas prices, higher shipping. That's the other thing. It'll make domestic manufacturing relatively more competitive because shipping costs are mostly driven by fuel. But um, and you'll have a decline in what's it called? Of You'll have a minor recession because a lot of people will just default or have to cut their spending in other ways to make up for the fact that they have to pay higher energy costs. High spikes in oil are often killers of business cycles. And if you have a recession heading into election, um, it will mean that the other party will have a strong advantage, and it could lead to a political environment where America is not the best place to put capital in, or less of the best place to do business, which means that other countries will become more competitive relative to the US, which is a long-term downward effect. But that's more of a 2029 problem. It also depends on if it's a moderate Democrat versus a more like AOC Bernie extreme level of socialist that gets in charge, because one of those is manageable, the other one could mean a bigger signs of trouble to come. Um, let's see. Um, the the other thing also, just speaking of the tour, is that if I do an international tour, I need more people to show up to make up for the higher air travel cost. That's another second order effect. Um, but sports fanaticism considered pro. I wouldn't have said so back when I was one, but I'm starting to become sympathetic to that point of view to a certain degree. Like if you're gonna put all this energy into watching other people accomplish your goals versus you doing your own, that's kind of a problem. And also, I generally don't like the idea of if you're gonna buy a sports jersey, have it custom monogrammed with your own last name on the back. Um, let's see. Way off topic, but since you like college basketball, do you think Tommy Lloyd leaves Arizona for Carolina? I don't know. I mean, I've heard U of A on the university level, not the athletic department, has had financial issues in recent years, and maybe that threat limits the ability for Arizona to match the NIL budget or the um, the salary that North Carolina may be willing to offer. So I think it's higher risk than say like Dusty May leaving Michigan. But I also it depends if he wins. I think if Arizona wins the national championship, it's very difficult to leave. But if they lose to Michigan in the Final Four, it might be more likely. Um, how do you see real estate of California evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? I think it's going to go down in real inflation adjusted terms, mainly due to net family formation being negative. There are more deaths than new families being formed in California. And I don't think the politics of immigration will change in a way that will be able to save California from a demographic point of view. Did NIL kill the hometown athletes? Yes, it did. I mean, it's also killed my interest in college basketball. Not really NIL, but it's NIL plus the unlimited transfers. Like if you had NIL, but it required you had to stay at the same university for at least until you graduated, so 3 to 4 years, I don't think it would have been a problem. The problem is you have college athletes going to 3 or 4 different schools in a 4 to 5 year period, and they're not getting a degree. They're not really ingratiating themselves with the community. It's like minor league professional sports at this point. Like if you had restrictions on transfers, NIL is fine. People should have a right to their name, image, and likeness, but you can't have NIL plus unlimited transfers. That's where it's. And I did a whole video about the economics of college basketball last year. It's called "How Economic Forces Are Destroying College Basketball," where I went more into that very topic. Have you ever thought about putting out something similar to your iceberg series in either a book or some kind of educational format for an affordable price? I think it'd be a game changer. I mean, there are plenty of people who've written books that are primers or all this stuff, or you can go to Investopedia. I mean, in the age of AI, I probably could have an LLM scrape the video and turn it into a mini workbook. I mean, would you guys want that to buy that? Honestly, it'd be worth my time to make it. Um, let me know. So that's that's my take. Is high alcohol and drug consumption considered prole? I would generally say so, yes. Even though there are histories of elites who have been known to have those vices, I would generally consider it prole from my definition because it fails the infinite scalability rule, and it also is a short volatility um, lifestyle choice. So it fails on 2 of the 3 accords at least. Um, yeah. Um, let me scroll. I'm gonna have a sip of water and then I'll keep answering questions, but I'll scroll up and try to find them. How would you invest a $5 million portfolio in Colombia to become wealthy? Real estate, ETFs, government bonds, stocks, or what? Are you required to invest in domestic things or can you invest internationally? Um, I mean, like if you want to become if you want to maintain your wealth and have it grow a little bit beyond inflation, I would have an internationally diversified global portfolio, a number of things. And as applies to your specific situation, I recommend contacting me directly for more specifics. I cannot give specific investment advice on these. So, yeah, but I would say I would definitely diversify it because home country risk in an emerging market country is a lot bigger of an issue. And even in the US, I say American investors are under diversified internationally, generally speaking. And I did a whole video about this last year called "Are You Too Invested in America?" My favorite city to live in California, it's a Newport Beach. I mean, I love it here. This is where I grew up. This is where I live now. Orange County is just like a unbeatable quality of life generally. Other places that I would would put up there. I think Dana Point is really nice. Honey and Beach on the coastal areas of Honey and Beach are really nice too. Um, there's certain parts of San Diego like Bankers Hill and the Mission Bay area and La Jolla. I would put up there too. Um, Santa Barbara would be nice if there was more to do. The problem with Santa Barbara, there's nothing to do for people between the ages of 23 and 60. It's fun for boomers to go in for the weekend. It's fun to go to college there, but there's not that much opportunity to make things happen in like the prime years of your life. So, um, yeah, I generally like coastal Orange County and a few coastal pockets of San Diego. Um, I would pick. Um, let's see. Was it growing up just like the OC? No, not quite. I mean, there are people who are similar to that who probably had similar lifestyles to that. People I went to high school with to a certain degree, but first of all, I think one character was a random guy, orphan-ish person from Chino who randomly stumbled in. That doesn't tend to happen. I don't really know much about the show. It was one of my sister's favorite shows growing up, but I didn't really watch much TV other than sports. Like when I was in high school, when that show was out, I mainly was watching live sports, whether it was Angels baseball, Lakers basketball, or college basketball. Um, that was my TV time. So I don't know much about the show, but I remember when I went to Spain, in between high school and college, there was a guy at the hostel who asked me if I knew who the characters were and the actors and actresses, and I'm like, no, they film in LA. They're not real people. And so he crossed Orange County off of his travel checklist because he couldn't meet the characters from the OC. I thought it was hilarious. Um, let's see. Do you think mental health problems are parole problems in high values? I think leave them untreated and not doing anything about it is a parole problem. And I think certain bad lifestyle choices increase the odds of having mental health problems. But a lot of mental health problems are just are sometimes genetic and can't really do anything about it. So I wouldn't really. It's not if it's something that's not a choice. It can't be parole. What part your favorite part of Spain? How long were you there for? I mean, I've been to Spain 3 times in my life. Um, the first time I went for like a long weekend in Barcelona because I was living with a relative in France for that summer, so I took a short flight to Barcelona. The second time, I also went back to Barcelona, and then the third time I went to Barcelona to visit my brother who was doing his semester abroad there at the time, and then went to Madrid and to Majorca for a family vacation. So, um, I haven't been to enough of Spain to say it my favorite parts. I think Spain would be a great country for a road trip, to be quite honest, because there's a lot of historically significant and interesting places there that are relatively close together. I'd include Portugal and Andorra and Gibraltar and just do an Iberian Peninsula road trip. I'd go to Lisbon, the Algarve, um, like the Camino air to Santiago in northern Spain, like go see San Sebastian and Dora. I've already been to Barcelona, so I don't really need to include that, but like Valencia and go to Malaga, Marbella, and Gibraltar and Madrid, and kind of, and there's probably a few other places I'm missing too, but it'd be a fun place to do a road trip. But my favorite place in Spain, I don't know. I'd say they're all different. I generally liked Madrid and Mallorca better than Barcelona. That might be a little bit of a contrarian view. Um, yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's a fun country to visit. I have good things to say about Spain. Um, let's see. Can men marry up in class like women can? Yes, they can, but I think it's not as easy for women to marry up in class as perceived in popular culture and general media. Like, and I generally think that people tend to be happier when they marry somebody plus or minus one social class from them. Are noise levels in a neighborhood a factor in whether or not a certain area can be considered prole? Yeah, because it's tacky just to randomly blast music without consideration of your neighbors at all hours of the day. Um, so I'm going to UCSB for engineering in the fall. Any advice? Um, I don't really. It depends. Like advice for what? For academics, for lifestyle. I need more details. I dang it. I just got the 30-minute alert that you were going live, but didn't set the reminder to set my phone down to shower and to cook dinner. But I'm sure it's been awesome so far. Will be watching replay for sure. Thank you for the support and the kind words. Um, so yeah. And I think the prole thing is using like a mental illness as like a badge of honor and something to brag about. A mental illness should be something you try to overcome and adapt and improve your life despite it, not being something that's like an identity source. Like pride movement, I think is something that I think is a little bit concerning. You shouldn't really be having pride for having being neurodivergent. And that is somebody who is probably neurodivergent saying this. Um, is high rent prices used as a filter to screen good tenants and neighbors? No, it's just simply supply and demand. That's what, and sometimes there are government interventions that will artificially reduce supply or increase demand. But I think rent is solely determined by supply and demand and not, I don't think people will increase the rents intentionally to keep people out because I don't think there's that many landlords who are willing to keep their property vacant indefinitely to enforce that if the market can't bear it. Um, Want to get your input on how much you make on YouTube and if it's worth running a financial channel. I'm not going to go into my specific numbers publicly, but like I don't think that you should have a career in being a YouTuber. First of all, the tail is so skewed to the right that um, the economics don't really make sense for 99% of people, and you are better off building a real business and using YouTube as a funnel for your primary business, or having some sense than the other years ago about why you should not be a YouTuber as your primary profession. I think YouTube is great. It's been a life changer for me. Like the income has helped with certain things. I reinvest a lot into the channel and use it a lot for the tour and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's not my primary source of income. My primary source of income is my main wealth management firm, Spearhead. So um, I think that you should use your YouTube as like a platform, an opportunity to share your ideas more than a moneymaker. Like I did YouTube for 3 years and I made basically nothing for the first 3 years. And if you're driven by money, you will quit way too early before you get any real traction. Um, will most modern families be forced to adapt multifamily housing throughout a child's upbringing? No, because I think people simply just would rather not have kids than force them to live in a tiny apartment their whole life. I think the declining birth rate is kind of a symptom of that. Um, what do you think about Chinese cars in Canada? Um, I mean, I don't really know what to think about them. Like, I don't know how much cheaper they are than regular cars. Like, what does a BYD electric car sell for compared to like a Volkswagen Golf in Canada? If you got any insight on that, that would help me. So the insight on this. Um, let's see. What do you think of the Bay Area or LA? You did not list those as one of your favorite areas. I mean, the Bay Area, San Francisco, I was just there on Saturday and I had a great meetup there. Good crowd. It's a fun place to go for a weekend. Like if you are in a if you're dating somebody seriously or you're married, it's a great place to take a date for a weekend because it's some of the best food in America. I think it's number one food city in America for San Francisco. So this is a scenic city for walking around, especially if the weather's good. But it's rare that the weather is warm. It's mostly cold and cloudy, no matter what time of the year it is. Like Mark Twain is famous for saying, I've never experienced a winter colder than a summer in San Francisco. And so the weather is kind of a drag. If you do not have a certain progressive value set, you're going to feel horribly out of place there all the time, socially and culturally. And like I didn't, and it's very expensive and all the buildings are very old. So you overpay generally for lower quality of life compared to other cities for a permanent residence. I think that the Bay Area is nice for visiting, not for living. And I think with LA, it's just a worse it's like if you had Orange County, but with a lot of the social problems of pearl drift and other things compacted into it and more expensive. I would not want to live in LA. I'd much prefer Orange County personally. There are some nice places in LA, but then they're much more expensive than their equivalents in Orange County, like Manhattan Beach or Beverly Hills. And you're also in closer proximity to lower trust neighborhoods, which impacts your quality of life as well. So I generally prefer Orange County over LA. I mean, I mean, if you especially like, if you're a really big nightlife person, that's the main like then maybe you need to be in a place that's busier like LA or San Francisco, but that's not really a priority for me. Um, let's see. $17,000 will be the cheapest model. BYD is supposed to open 20 car dealerships. Okay, so how does that compare to like a Volkswagen Golf or like the cheapest like GM car in Canada? So I need to kind of have um, an idea of a proxy. Uh, what are your thoughts on solving the affordability issue on the US? I know you mentioned raising the floor. Does that mean minimum wages of $25, $30 an hour UBI? No, I think the solution really to the cost of living crisis is permitting deflation. Like you can't get everybody up to $250,000 a year in real terms. You can maybe in nominal terms, but then um, everything is if that's the case, then basically just the price level will rise proportionally because you have more demand chasing the same amount of goods. So the solution has to be a supply side oriented one. You need to flood the market with housing to make it more affordable. You need to just increase the supply of things without increasing the demand for labor. And then you can also strengthen the labor market by reducing using policy tools to reduce the supply of the labor market. I don't think artificial minimum wages will do any good. That'll just make businesses not competitive. And embracing AI and robotics is part of the solution too, because they will allow things to be produced at much lower cost points. And you have to shift the tax system to stop taxing earned income and more focus on property or consumption or something like that. um, have you ever done a meetup in New Orleans? No, I've been in New Orleans once for a vacation with my friends in 2022. I would do it if I had enough people who wanted me to come there, and I'd like to maybe link it to like going to like an LSU football game at night. And they can maybe mix that to like that would be the curated experience, and then have the meetup in New Orleans because I don't think Baton Rouge is too far away. If somebody wants to help me set something like that up, feel free to reach out to me. Um, favorite ETFs? I'm not going to answer that question. That goes into the specific investment advice category. Cheapest other cars are 25 to 30K. So yeah, the introduction of Chinese cars into Western markets will do what Chinese products did to other things. It will lower the quality probably of a lot of products overall, but also make everything cheaper. It'll be very deflationary. And so, like, companies will have to make cheaper cars to compete, or they will be priced out, and you'll get a Detroit like situation, like what happened when Japanese and Korean cars were introduced to America in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. Except, it's just the next level lower. And yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. And there is a sign of a geopolitical concern because you need to have the capability to produce heavy machinery in your own country. And that's kind of what the auto companies are a proxy for. But was I born rich? It depends on what your definition of rich is, but I wouldn't say I was born rich. Um, like that's, but I'm not going to go into my specific socioeconomic class. I mean, it's kind of, I was born in an independent professional class family and I had a lot of siblings. So I didn't really, I'd say, grow up in a life of intense privilege, but I would say it was fairly comfortable though. Um, what's it called? Is living in a gated community with a high HOA a good way to seclude yourself from prole drift? Um, let's see. Uh, is because in a way, but like it depends where the gated communities. It's better off to be in a higher trust society as a whole, so that you don't feel scared for your safety or feel uncomfortable just leaving your walled community. I think the more important point of gated communities is security for children. So, like, you don't have to worry about strange people driving into your neighborhood that you don't know about, or like their kids running away from home, or stuff like that. Um, but but let's see. I'm looking to be a first time home buyer in the next year. I've noticed that many smaller homes in my area are reserved sold 55 plus. Have you noticed this? Why would this be? Yeah, that's going to become an increasing trend. And I'm actually at my speech in San Francisco. I covered that idea of like the increase of 55 plus communities because retirees don't want to be around young people who are noisy and are more likely to invite friends over or deal with kids or any of that stuff. And I think as that generation grows, that age group grows as a bigger percentage of the population, I think that will become more and more common. And also that restriction, it makes the houses more affordable because there's less people who can buy them versus the general public. The main demand for first time home buyers are young families. And young families don't, and if it's only 55 plus, they either probably already own their house someplace else, or there's just less of them in the market for houses in general. So that's why those places tend to be more affordable as well. Um, are townhome HOA communities in the future? Yeah, there's already a lot of townhome communities that already do have HOAs. That's not really new. Should I learn horse riding to unprol yourself? I don't think just learning how to ride a horse is going to unprol yourself. You should learn horseback riding because it's something you're legitimately interested in doing. Like doing a hobby just because of like how other people perceive you is not really an optimal way to live life. Would you insulate yourself from the lower class if you had a choice? Why is the growing? Um, let's see. I mean, yeah, I mean, you want to, especially if you have a family, you do want to insulate yourself from was not necessarily the lower class just for being lower class, but more that you want to insulate yourself from the negative um, externalities from low class communities rather than the individuals themselves. That's why people move to high trust communities. I wouldn't necessarily insulate myself from lower class, but I want to insulate myself from a low trust community. Um, the dire escape pearl drift an example of pearl drift? No, I think it's a consequence of it. Um, so let's see. What are your let's see. Do you think friendships between pros and the rich are sustainable? It depends on what you mean by what is a pro. Like it's usually, and it also depends what type of friendship you want. Like for like more shallow casual friendships, I don't really see it as a problem. And if it's somebody you grew up with and have a shared history, it's probably not an issue either. Um, and then but in terms of like also, if you grew up in a more lower class background, you're probably more likely to be friends with people in that because you can relate to it more, even if you advance yourself. That's very common. I don't really think you should choose not to be friends with somebody just because of their class value. That's fairly pretentious. I think it's more that people naturally tend to be friends with people in their class levels because they tend to have more in common and can relate to each other better and have the same schedules, the same lifestyle preferences, etc. Like I noticed when I left corporate America and became an entrepreneur, I increasingly had more self-employed business owner friends. I mean, I thought it was a coincidence at the time, but I realized I just have more in common with them and they have a schedule that fits my lifestyle more than people who are more at 9 to 5s. I still have friends who work 9 to 5s, but I've noticed that my social circle has evolved in that way ever since I became self-employed full time. Um, what is the biggest indicator of a low trust area? It's high crime rates. Um, what what's it called? Will prole drift create a two-tiered society separated by geography? Not any more than it is already now. I would say. Um, I mean, I don't think inequality is inherently a problem, and did whole videos on why that's the case. And America still has social mobility. If you have agency, you can move out of the and improve yourself. We're not like feudal Europe or ancient India where they had caste systems and more rigid class hierarchies. There still is social mobility. So I would say no. Which party picks up the most seats in the midterm elections? I mean, the Democrats, unless if like a miracle economic and geopolitical miracle happens, the Democrats are going to win the midterms. It's not really a question at this point. If I wanted to move from Washington once the kids leave, where should I go? It depends on what kind of life do you want. Like, what are your hobbies? What's your income level? Um, do you still need a job? Are you retired? Like that's kind of a little bit what's it called? It's too vague of a question. Um, you're an interesting person. Is there an event in your life that drew you towards analyzing socioeconomic divisions in life? No, there's not a single like thing. I mean, I've started analyzing more on this channel mainly on your guys' requests because for some reason that topic hits a nerve with you guys more than other stuff I do. Like when I try to go more deep into the weeds to like financial related topics, they tend not to resonate as well for a variety. I'll still do them because I find it personally interesting. And everybody, I get criticism like, why do you only talk about prole drift or social class? Well, I mean, over 2/3 of my videos are other topics. You just never watch them. So um, that's my take on that. What do you think about successful tradespeople? I mean, good for them. Like, I have nothing against successful tradespeople. The only issue I have is that you have this narrative, particularly in conservative circles, that you push people who are academically talented and otherwise would be more suited for the white collar world to pursue the trades as some sort of like anti college grievance that really shouldn't exist. That's my problem, like, in view of the trades. I have no problem with people who choose to do trades. Some people, it's better for them to be in the trade, so it's more in line with their aptitudes and their interests. But I think pushing as a universal solution, like a lot of people used to push college as the universal solution, I think is misguided. Um, is there a dating app for upper class and entrepreneurial class? I mean, in theory, the league might be that, but they're kind of judgy of where you went to school because they kind of very filter people based on their LinkedIn or when they went to school. But the fact that people will go onto like an app like that kind of and they care too much about that might be a red flag in its own sense to a certain degree. You can also find them on other mainstream apps like Hinge, for example, and you just have to learn how to vet people for certain things that you care about. And that takes some discernment skills. But yeah, I mean, it's more about avoiding the ones that are associated with lower class and that are more tacky type of crowd. There are certain apps that do have that bias. And I think your answer is more avoiding those. And then Raya is technically a more elite one, but that's more based on influencers and how much social media following you have on Instagram, which may not be a reflection of your class. Um, yeah, that's what I was saying is Raya, but that's again, it's more based on your social media following more than your actual like socioeconomic outcomes. Am I a pro? 137K a year, no debt, works from home, speaks 3 languages, avid reader, but watch UFC and gamble on fights, and addicted to YouTube. No, I wouldn't say you have a pro. I think that watching UFC is kind of has some of those tendencies because it's a combat sport. But I mean, everybody has pro hat perfectly refined. And if you met somebody who's perfectly refined, um, they would probably be impossible to relate to. So no, I would say you're not a pro based on the way you've described yourself. Um, so that's my answer. Um, and I think with the trades, I think robots are at risk of automating a lot of the trades. So if you're going to do something trade, you need to have a trade that focuses on fixing edge cases that are hard to automate. Um, let's see. How do I get a job? I have a degree from a top college, but no specific degree. Watch my last live stream about AI. I did the whole breakdown on this on there. And I'm gonna have a clips of it condensed into shorter videos that are gonna come out, I think, in the next week or two. So I don't really want to repeat myself for that. Why is there so many late bloomer men? Because men are not valued on traits that are easily acquired in youth. They're often men are valued, especially in the dating market, but also in society, based on their ability, their talent, their ability to actually do things, not just pure potential, but their actual ability to execute and the results of that, whether that's wealth, whether that's having a definable skill that you can get a base of clients on, whether that is being like, I'd say, like, looks maxing. If you I'd rather use that same money in what I'd call, like, adventure maxing. Like, instead of getting a bunch of cosmetic surgeries, go out and try risky hobbies, travel the world, try to start a business, go and do things and earn and create some challenges in your life. And if you succeed, you'll you'll be in a good position socioeconomically. But even if you fail, you'll get a lot of respect from other people who've played in the arena and done things, and you'll have interesting stories to tell. Like, in general, I think men, if they want the alternative to looks maxing, if you really want to improve yourself, just be a man in the arena. Go out and do things. Um, did you enjoy the film The Sound of Music? That's my father's favorite movie. I'm not a musicals guy, to be honest, but they have a lot of classic songs in there, let's just say the least. But that's my take on The Sound of Music. Um, let's see. What is your opinion on lateral conflict in the world today? It seems like dividing the classes lower than the elite is imperative to social control. I mean, the thing is that the upper classes are the ones who are actually the more divided, and they try to create polarized issues to attempt to divide the lower classes, because if you're on one side of the aisle, the natural, at least in the short term, because in the long term the economics are very different, but in terms of short term economic interests, the lower classes are going to support economic populism that is bad for society. Like, if you took out the R and the D on the names of every policy platform, I think like 60 to 80% of Americans would vote for Bernie Sanders' economic platform, or maybe something even more radical than that. But the Republicans are very good marketers, and they focus on wedge issues where people do disagree to make the balance 50-50. And if they didn't do that, then we would probably be more like Argentina than the United States. So, I mean, maybe the divide and conquer is a way to actually keep the society from voting bad policies. There's a whole book about this called The Myth of the Rational Voter, which basically that the median voter tends to want to vote for self-destructive economic policies. Um, let's see. Is there a book, person, or experience that inspired you to talk about Pearl Drift? I mean, I read Class by Paul Fussell was a book that was recommended by one of you guys that helped me get with the idea of it. But I think it was actually a byproduct of my engagement is what inspired me, because when I got engaged, I first did that video about the economic cost of marriage, and then it led me to looking at social class in marriage, and I realized one of the more pearl drifty things are people who live together for 5 years plus, assuming they're past their education years, and never get married. And I'm like, what are some other examples of pearl drifts than people just living together forever and never marrying? And that's where I dived into the rabbit hole. So you could thank my fiance as kind of being my inspiration for that whole series. And it doesn't hurt that she's a very classy woman herself. Let's see. Nick, what do you think is the most non-pro philosophy or worldview to have? Like, you mean of like the general philosophies out there, or just my own philosophies? Like, I generally think it's the ideas. I don't know if you watched the beginning of this live stream, but it's the infinite scalability thesis and the long ball versus vol approach, like skin in the game. like have like that having skin in the game and being personally accountable for all your actions. And I think in general, Christianity is very anti-pro drift. Um, and person and just the willingness to take personal responsibility is very anti-pro drift as well. Um, let's see. Um, what is the R and the D? Oh, I was referring to Republicans and Democrats. Um, yeah. Did you meet your fiance on Riot or the League? No, I did not. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of any identifying information because I want to keep her private and my family members private as well. They don't want to be celebrities, so I'm not going to go into details about that. Um, let's see. Do you think location matters to entrepreneurship? Do you have to be in tech SF for tech entrepreneurship? I think it depends on the industry. I think nationally it matters. Like being in the United States is a major boost for being an entrepreneur than other countries. There's no doubt about that because other countries have much more hostile legal system, bankruptcy laws, and other regulations to make it harder to be a startup. So I think on the national level, definitely. On the state level, it depends what kind of business you are in. Like it really like if you're a more local, like individual, like service business, you want to be where you have the biggest potential client base, which is usually the people in your own social network. So a place that you can actually establish a community and plant the flag is an asset. If you're trying to do like a scale up and you need to raise venture capital money, you either need to be in the Bay Area or have the flexibility to fly out to the Bay Area and do road shows. But I think in the age of like the internet, I don't think you have to be in San Francisco or necessarily. In fact, it might be a due to California's business regulations, high taxes, and high um, real estate costs, it actually might be prohibitive. You might have to pay employees a lot more or spend more on office space than other places. But you just you're going to have to be able to make road shows and go visit investors, or you might live there while you're building up the business. But once you get your seed round or your Series A, you start the business someplace more financially competitive. Um, I like your videos, our traditional finance commentary. Yeah, I'm afraid, like, I don't really know what the algorithmic effects are of me changing my name. I thought I was changing it to my full name, the channel, but but at the same time, I still mostly look at things from a financial and economic perspective. So I think the name still works. And I like that it starts with an A, so it shows on the top of channel search results when you're subscribed. Do hipsters still exist? I think they have all turned into proles and committed to being neo-communists. I mean, I think they've always been that way, to be quite honest. I think hipsters are prole drift. So it's kind of like the meme with the astronaut and the gun, like say, oh, it's really different. No, but it's always been. Um, what's the practical amount of house that you see an average family of five needing to live a good life? Probably like a 3-bedroom house, I would say. Like, is you assuming it's a mom and dad and 3 kids? Yeah, you can do it. The smallest you could probably like a 3 to 4 bedroom house can work with that. Um, like, what's it called? Like I know growing up, I was from a family of 5 and I had to share a room with my brother most of the time growing up until high school, basically. Um, but yeah, I mean, with larger families, you need a bigger house, but for like a 3 family of 5, 3 or 4 bedrooms is what you need. Um, let's see, what's it called? Um, have you ever thought about doing more videos in economics tied to sports? Those are some of your highest viewed videos. Actually, they're my lowest viewed videos. The only ones that were high were the when I intersected sports with social class, or when I was doing a social commentary about like class of what people associate with what. Whereas like when I do actual deep dives into like the economics of specific sports like college football or baseball, um, they were actually some of my lowest rated videos. The reason why I'm not going to do many more of those is not because of ratings because I've already did them. I did the video on baseball. I did the video on college basketball, which I already posted earlier in this live stream. I did the video about the dire future of college football back when USC and UCLA left the Pac-12, and I've already did the college football video. And so what is there left for me to do? I mean, I don't care about the NFL at all. I never did, so I don't really have much insight into that. I mean, the NBA, maybe I could do a video about that, or the Olympics. I'll probably do a video about the Olympics, especially if I'm planning on going to the Olympics in 28. So it could be but beyond that, there's not really I think I've already kind of hit what I've wanted to cover with sports. But I do like sports business. I find actually I follow sports business more than I follow actual sports at this point. Um, do you have any videos on demographics and social class related geographical areas? Societies closer to the equator tend to be poor, and societies further from the equator tend to be richer. I mean, I've done the geography of wealth, which is a whole playlist of basically where are the old and new money neighborhoods of each metropolitan area. The most recent one I did was about the South, which just came out on Sunday actually. And so I've already done that video. I've already done and I've also done the old money vacation guide, which is this video about all the popular travel destinations for old and new money. I released it on Labor Day last year, and it's a compilation of all my travel videos related to the topic. Yeah, so that's kind of my take on this. I've already done a lot of those, but I do like geography. I do a lot of economic futures videos about various countries. You can look them up too. I'll add to that series when I travel to new places. That's my philosophy on that. What's it called? Do you think religious schools and institutions stand a chance against the portal and NIL? Yeah, I mean BYU is a big winner of the portal NIL because the Mormon Church has a lot of money that they're willing to invest in BYU sports, and the LDS want BYU to succeed, and they're disproportionately alumni of BYU, so they're willing to donate a lot. So I think they're a big winner, and they're a religious school of NIL. I mean, Notre Dame, if the Catholic community was willing to consolidate football around them, could be a big winner because there's only two, I think, D1 FBS college football schools left. That's Notre Dame and Boston College. So I think Notre Dame football side, not basketball, because there's a lot of other basketball Catholic schools. But I think you might see some of the Catholic schools fall behind because they're not willing to play the game, or they just don't have the resources. Like one to watch, especially now that their coach has left, is St. Mary's. I'm worried about their future of their athletic program after Randy Bennett left. Just joining live. Thoughts how you can not only improve personally, but collectively unprol U.S. society? What has to shift? I mean, you need to be a good example for people around you. That's step one. People that will eventually rub off on other people, particularly your own kids. Second, again, having a larger family, so your family's a disproportionate size of the next generation, and not being afraid to call out people where you see there's a problem. I think that's like in a world of moral relativism where everybody's point of view is equally valid. A lot of people are afraid to call a spade a spade. Is caring about having good manners, being kind, empathetic, a pro behavior forced by necessity? No. I would not say so at all, actually. If anything, it's the opposite. Let's see. I don't really have enough insight on the finances of the Mormon Church to do a video on it. Well, the Pearl Drift hairstyles video. Yeah, I talked to my the guy who cuts my hair about this, and he sent me a few research papers to read. And I think that's one I will make in the future. It's just a matter of when I decide to do it, because you can tell a lot about social class based on haircuts. That is definitely a thing. Let's see. Now I'm going to scroll up and try to find because I know I missed some questions. If you want me to ask your question for sure, please leave a super chat or repost it because a lot of these get lost in the shuffle. To be quite honest, um, especially if there's a longer question that I go and talk a long time. Um, yeah, and I don't really want to have big gaps of conversation here. So if you did post a question that I missed, repost a super chat because there's too many comments here. I'm not going to be able to find them up here, to be quite honest. Um, let's see. Moving to Utah soon. Why do Mormons have money? I mean, again, I'd have to do a deeper dive before I have the definitive answer. And I'm not going to give an incomplete answer to like controversial questions like that without full context. Um, let's see. What businesses would you recommend women to start to become rich and elegant? Um, I'd be the same ones that I'd recommend men to start to be rich and elegant. With the differences is that if your interests line up differently, I think women have advantages in things that involve businesses that involve like more personal interactions and more like the luxury businesses, any like high end luxury services or luxury good businesses. I think women have advantages in um, because they naturally have better social skills and are better perceiving like what consumers buy. And women also tend to be the ones who disproportionately shop for discretionary items compared to men. So I think like consumer type luxury goods and services, I think maybe would be something at advantage. But in general, I think it's the same ones I'd recommend men to do. Um, why is white collar society associated with proprietorship and blue collar associated with employees? I don't think that's true anymore. Like there's a lot of white collar employees that are associated with labor and don't really have meaningful capital or savings. That might have been I think that might have been like pre World War II. That's definitely the case, but I don't think your typical person at an office job at a Fortune 500 company represents capital anymore. They're definitely more in line with labor. Um, so yeah. What about antiques and heirlooms? What do you mean about that? For what? Um, let's see. Um, yeah, so let's blue collar often start their own businesses while white collar own massive organizations they don't own. Yeah, that's kind of proving my point right there. That like I don't think the blue and white collar split is a capital versus labor split anymore. How does OC manage to stay such a conservative pocket in a very liberal area? Well, I mean, it's gotten more liberal. Well, had a liberal swing from 2004 to 2020, or even 2016 might have been the peak of Orange County Democratic Party, but it had and that was due to the combination of um, a lot of millennials with their voting patterns moving into the cities and like the larger percentage of college students as a percentage of the population, um, and the sense of increased perception of economic precarity driving voting patterns. Like the precariat class is the base of the Democratic Party nowadays, and you have an increased amount of precariats even in Orange County. But it's been, in general, adjusted for population density. I think Orange County is still the most conservative place in America with our population density or higher. And I think it's because there's a general ethos here that you kind of need to buy into, not by the law or anything, but just like informally, or you're going to feel misplaced. Like there's, and this is especially true in South Orange County. And it's a mix of like semi-Christian ethics plus a belief in capitalism and entrepreneurship, which kind of built the back of Orange County. And it's a disproportionately, that's where people go to start businesses and to escape the low trust behaviors of LA. And usually the people who want to escape the low trust behaviors of LA don't often share the values of the people who vote for the permission of that kind of stuff. So it's a self-selecting kind of crowd. And Orange County's always been kind of a hub of right-wing politics. Southern California in general has been a hub of right-wing politics. Like San Diego, given its population size and relative density, is actually pretty right-wing. And LA is also considerably more right-wing than New York or San Francisco and other mega cities of its size around the world. And I think that it's just kind of a selection. And Orange County also had more people from the Midwest move there versus people in Central California versus people who are from the Northeast who are more likely to move to LA and San Francisco. And I think it's a higher percent of home ownership has something to do with it, and just more, or business ownership. It's just more skin in the game for communities. There's a lot of variables, but I think Orange County is actually starting to trend back to the right. I think 2020 in general is the peak of the left in California for the foreseeable future. Thank you for the massive super chat, Emerald King. Do you have a question attached to that? But that's my general view. I think Orange County is going to swing back hard to the right. I don't know if it'll be at 2004 levels. Like in 2004, I think Orange County voted 60% for George W. Bush, which was like the same margin he was getting in like Texas. But I think it was going to definitely more trend closer to that direction than the other direction for the foreseeable future. And I think that's a positive development. Like if Orange County was elected a more left-leaning DA, we might have a lot of the crime problems of LA. What do you think of someone starting their career in corporate banking? What does the trajectory of that person look like? Yeah, I mean, commercial banking, you would just become a commercial banker. Like you could have a successful career doing that. I know a lot of people who've had a lot of success being commercial bankers. It's a lot slower than normal finance, and it's a lot less volatile unless if your bank is making bad loans. It's more about, that profession is more risk management focused than growth focused, because there'll always be room for growth because there's always going to be people who want to borrow money. It's your job to be prudent to lend to people who are not going to be too risky for your bank. And that's essentially I think what commercial banking is. But yeah. Deal with seniors who've done well in life. What is the best way to relax in public settings while talking to them? Focus. I mean, seeing like, you don't be intimidated by the fact that they've done well in life. Ask them about their story and what you can learn from them. People love to talk about themselves. And if they have somebody who's accomplished, really a self-made person, they love to talk about their story, especially if it's not on social media or the internet. And that's how I would do it. I would just ask more about themselves. That's kind of, I would, yeah, and see what you can learn from them. And also find if you have any commonalities. That's another thing. Like, I'm part of a lot of intellectual discussion group in this community that's overwhelmingly senior, and they want insight. They don't understand the perspective of people in their 20s, 30s, early 40s. And so they want to hear the other side on things like that. So, and see your perspective. And if you can say in a way that doesn't come off as hostile or generational class warfare, I think you won't have any problems. It's going to the live theater pro drift. No, I wouldn't say that at all. I don't think going to Broadway or a theater show is pro drift. I generally think it's not worth the money, especially for these popular shows like Hamilton in its prime. But I don't really say it's pro drift. What's it called? Yeah. That's that's was the next question that I had to say before that. Why is populism so popular in the West right now? Are elites losing moral authority? I did a video about the economics of populism a while ago. I call it populism, a class revolt in the ballot box, and it goes really into that. And it's basically the idea that living standards are dropping for the bottom 70% of the population due to a variety of economic forces. Some that are bad policy decisions from leaders, others are just things outside of their control. And they don't really deal with it very well. And because they don't deal with it, either they refuse to deal with it or they don't deal with it, then people get mad and they say, hey, look, the establishment can't solve our problem. We need to have somebody more radical until somebody finally deals with it and the economy gets better. Like the classic issue on this is immigration. Um, immigration is in Europe, especially, no mainstream party wanted to deal with because they had this belief: oh, we're running out of workers. We need to replace them with younger people. It doesn't matter what their education is, their cultural compatibility. As long as we have the bodies, it should fix the problem. And they were wrong about that. It was a horrible miscalculation. And so as a result, people don't trust the establishment because they think it's selfish reasons because they want cheap labor and they don't care that the immigration has affected the quality of their lives and lowered the social trusts and made housing more expensive and wages lower than they would be otherwise. And that is, I think, the single issue. If you had to see what's the root of modern populism, is the establishment was not willing to deal with it. And so they had to go outside the establishment to deal with it. And it's not always immigration, it could be other economic issues, but it's usually the establishment refuses to solve a problem that is obvious to everybody that they're not willing to deal with it either because their vested interests are against it or they don't have a solution. They don't know how to deal with it. It's one or the other. That's how it is. Um, why? And so watch the video for the longer thing on that. Uh, it seems like they are rolling back immigration in Europe and Canada, but it might be too little, too late. But we'll see. Um, let's see. Is working a dental lab tech considered a white collar job? Um, yeah, I would generally say it is considered a white collar job for. I mean, it's kind of both. You are doing like a physical trade in a way, but it also requires a lot of formal education. And generally, jobs that require a bachelor degree and higher are considered white collar jobs. So it probably is considered a white. Do you think crude will hit 200 this year? Who knows? I would have said no like couple weeks ago, but now we're already, despite it seeming like hopes of de escalation for this Iran war, the oil is not moving down. I mean, I think if you get above like the 150 level, you see real demand destruction. And so I think demand will start to drop, particularly in developed economies. So uh, I think that I would say it's less likely for oil to break 200, but it could. But it's not my base case. Um, is accounting a big four job good? It depends on what you want to do in the long run. And do you find accounting to actually be interesting? There's I don't really think there's a universal job that's good for everybody, and I think that's the mistake our society pushes. That's kind of it's like, "Oh, there's there's only one or few fixed career paths because there's most people are trying to chase the combination of relatively high pay and high job security at the same time, and that's also not overly competitive, but that's an impossible trinity. Maybe I should make a video about this. Like you can't have a job that's not that you got to pick two of the three. Not overly competitive, high paying, and secure. You usually have to give up one of those three, and it's which one you're okay. Like entrepreneurship and like working in like high finance, like in the trading and investment management world, is high pay and is not overly competitive, but you also it's not safe. It's a lot of risk. You get fired if you have a bad year or if your business fails, like you don't make any money. So then there's others like working for government, which is stable and not too much competition, but at the same time, it's not super high paying generally. So there's always there's always a trade-off. And I just generally think that in most modern political, economic, and social discussions, people are willfully ignorant or refuse to acknowledge that there are trade-offs. Everybody wants everything and not willing to assess the real. Maybe from their private lives, they are willing to assess trade-offs. And this might be like a pro signal is not willing to acknowledge trade-offs or being in denial of trade-offs. Like, so that I think everything has trade-offs. That's my point of my little rant here. Nick, thanks for the great content. What would your advice be for a young outside sales rep with university education be specifically build long-term wealth in Canada? Well, I mean, it depends. How tied are you to Canada? Would you be, I mean, I think honestly, if I was a young Canadian, I would try to move to the US if like the opportunity permitted me, because I think there are more opportunities in the United States than Canada. Second, assuming like geographic, although it's equal, try to be selling a product that people are going to need. Like industrial sales, I think there's a huge opportunity in industrial robotics and being and selling, finding the product. Maybe you start a business, you find a technical co-founder who's building the robots, and you're the one who's the BD co-founder who goes out and sells it and gets it to market. That could be probably your way to get like rich, the high risk way. The low risk way is work for a big company that's selling those products in the marketplace and have a good run of selling them. Be where the products are needed. Where would you direct a top 10 school stats major about to graduate? I'm heavily in debt for one of these. I mean, I would data science probably would be it. Finance is another thing that you can do, quant finance or even qualitative finance. I mean, stats is a skill that can be used for a lot of things. I think a lot of business related roles and a lot of financial roles, and also a lot of like quantitative, scientific and analysis type roles. I think you have a lot of options. So I wouldn't be too worried. Actuary, somebody comments, another good one. There's a lot of ways it's really was based on your kid's aptitude and interest, because the risk is burning out. You don't want to do something that's just because it's stable. That's how it leads to burnout. And then they become basically lazy precariats throughout once the burnout moment hits, because they're just not motivated to push beyond that. So that's what you need to be careful for. Is balding prole drift? No, because balding is something that just it's genetic. It mostly cannot be controlled. Let's see. Do you see stocking up on physical media a good sign of investment, like DVDs? People want to revert to them. No, I don't really think so. I mean, there's some that are collectibles. Like I'm surprised, like some of my old video games have collector's item value. Like I have one on my shelf that I found just digging through my mother's house, and that was my old school original gold version of Zelda Majora's Mask. I mean, I just have sentimental value for it, and I still have my Nintendo 64 because I want my kids to eventually play on it. But it's in terms of like, you don't know which ones will become valuable or which ones will not. It's like any other kind of collectible. If you have a passion for collecting, great, but it's not, I wouldn't really see it as a viable investment strategy. Let's see. What was your education, your major? I went to UC Santa Barbara and I got a business economics major. And I also did a technology management program certificate, which is like a minor in entrepreneurship. Let's see. Is plastic surgery prole drift? It depends what kind and how well it's done. And I think plastic surgery is a way to like help gracefully age, is not prole drift. But if it's younger people, like in their 20s doing plastic surgery, that changes the story quite a bit. So that's kind of my personal take on it. Yeah. Let's see. Are aversion to therapy and self-improvement a symptom of low trust and prole drift? No, I think it's a gender thing, a lot of it. Like, I think men tend to be disproportionately averse to therapy because I don't think therapy fixes a lot of mental health issues for men. I think the reason why men have depressed is because they don't like their circumstances. They need to make a change in their life and take action. Anxiety is often the disease of inaction for men, at least, and depression to a certain degree. So I think therapy tends, so like, I don't think avoiding therapy is necessarily prole drift because it doesn't necessarily work. And also, certain cultures, like Catholic cultures, tend to need therapy less because confession to your priest for your sins kind of serves as a pseudo therapy. Um, yeah. So that's kind of, so I mean, I think aversion to trying to fix your own problems in general and go and trying to avoid finding help can often be so. I think you're better than that. You don't need to ever ask anybody for help if you really need it. But I think therapy specifically, that's a different story. Um, is buying businesses and stacking them a good way to get rich? Making sure it has enough money to hire a manager. If the numbers make sense, it could work. But I think it's not as obvious as people on social media pitch it to be because if it was that easy, well, the big private equity firms would be doing it. Do you have an opinion on the power of ancient artifacts? The Walton family reportedly spends 100 million on acquiring powerful artifacts. What do you mean, like Christian relics? I mean, it just seems like a lot of pseudoscience. Honestly, I mean, from a collector's value, it would be cool to have some Christian medieval relics. But and like some of this collector stuff is just fun from like a collection or stuff. Like when I hit successful business owner, counter elite level, I'll probably have a whole room of like interesting exotic items that I like to collect. Maybe a few fossils, maybe a few Christian relics, maybe a few historical things, whatever. But and have like a fireplace and a wall. Yeah, that's kind of on my bucket list, but um it's not. I don't really understand what can you define precariat class for the people here? The precariat class are people who they generally have a college education, but it's not necessary, but it's basically somebody who works like what's to mention like a white collar type profession or is trained for that, but they're overeducated relative to their income and they're making just enough to get by, but not enough to really have any meaningful savings or to buy a house or to have a family or anything like that. So like the classic example is somebody who studied a useless major in college and now works as like a barista, or like people who vote for Elizabeth Warren. I did a whole video. It's about genteel poverty. It's people who usually grew up in a more privileged background, but the combination of their life choices and or economic forces making their skills not relevant enough in the economy puts them in what would otherwise be a more lower class, working class lifestyle. And here's the video I did about genteel poverty for context. Any advice for balancing passion projects with family and work? Are your strategies found useful to make the most of your time? Yeah, it's batching. That's the one that's the most useful, I would say, is you need to batch stuff. Like for YouTube, for example, I'll spend like a whole day, usually a Saturday or maybe Sunday after church, that I'll just record 4 to 8 videos. And then I will spend maybe like a night to edit those videos. And so like I can't record, like I release videos 2 days a week, but I'm not recording twice a week on a regular interval. That'd be very time inefficient. And actually I'm in the process of pre-recording a bunch of videos because I'm getting married this summer and I can't be working on videos while I'm getting my wedding and my honeymoon and moving to a new place and all of that, and just my normal business responsibilities on the tour. And so as a result, I have to pre-record these videos so that you guys don't realize I'm gone during that time. And so that's one example. So like I'll have one day that I do business development and calls and follow-ups. I'll have one day that I do content. I'll do one day I do deep dive investment research. Sometimes you have to mix things up because other people have schedules. Like sometimes a client really needs to talk to you on your on your research day, or sometimes like the market has a lot of volatility, and so what's it called? The other time, sometimes the mark like gets really volatile, and you have to cancel. You have to even if you have a lot of business development meetings, or you have to cancel your content for another day because you need to focus on research for the markets. And you can apply this to your own profession. But I think having block scheduling is the key. And also writing down everything you need to get done for that day, that week, or that month. Like every Sunday night, I generally book hour by hour what I'm supposed to do on a given day so that I know what I need to get done and what time I've allocated to it. Because Parkinson's principle is a real thing too. So that's kind of how I do this. And if sales gets busy, I might have to slow down my YouTube to once a week, but also using AI has helped me a lot. Like AI for editing and a lot of the back end stuff you guys don't notice. It allowed me to double my output for YouTube while not increasing the time loads too bad. So yeah, I think utilizing technology and hiring people when you have the budget to can help you scale. Like hiring my admin for my firm was a major time saver too. And as my firm grows, hiring more people to help me with the tasks that aren't the best use of my time will also be a way to help accelerate my productivity. All right. Thank you again for the big super chat. If something has power, it gives you an intense feeling. Doesn't matter the religion. Usually has to do with official ritual. Don't mean to get taboo. Hope this helps. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know about some of the weird occult proclivities of certain elites. I don't think they all fit that. Like, I just know example, like in the Southern California Catholic community, there's a lot of people who are using their sizable fortunes to invest and do good things, mainly to support schools for disadvantaged youth to go to private Catholic schools or stuff like that. So I don't think everybody who's in the elites is part of like these like weird cabals with Aleister Crowley styles type of stuff. And I think those who do tend to be part of those things, I think are weirdly naive and gullible to a certain degree. But that's just kind of my take on that. Is this the end of the petrodollar? Is Iran forcing ships to pay oil in yuan, also paying the toll in yuan? No. I mean, I think the end of the petrodollar would be when oil is no longer the main source of energy production and consumption. Like, if oil prices get too high, that's the other thing. Alternative energy will become more mainstream. People complain that nobody wants to buy electric cars. Well, if oil's $200 a barrel, everybody's going to be buying electric cars, and which are powered by either natural gas plants, nuclear, or other things. So, yeah, I think it's a very. I think the petrodollar thing was more of a 1970s to 2000s issue than a present issue. Do you day trade? No, I do not day trade. 99% of people who day trade lose all their money. It's not really the optimal thing to do. At my firm and with my own capital, my target is a 3 to 5 year horizon at this point in my life. I used to trade for much more shorter time periods when I was in the hedge fund world, but at this current stage of my life, especially as technology has made short-term trading more popular, the alpha is more in longer term horizons at this point. Let's see, what else do we have? Do you recognize the nostalgia economy in the USA? Retro games, packaging, movie mixed up at that. I'm actually doing a whole nostalgia in 2 weeks when I get back from New York. So we're going to have a whole long conversation basically about nostalgia. I also did a video with my friend Ben, who's appeared on the channel a few times, to talk about the economics of collectibles and how the nostalgia drives that industry But yeah, we're gonna do a whole another live stream, so I don't want to get too much into nostalgia on this one because that's literally the next show. What's it called? Nick, you're amazing at following months from now. Keep up posting. Would love to see you at a seminar someday. Yeah, I don't know what city you're in, but feel free to come to one of the meetups of the country this year. And the ones we have, this will be a good time because to go in is because there's a lot of you new people and it's been a while. But I'll just give you some update about kind of what's going on in the channel. We've got the tour still going. We have 6 cities left, starting with Toronto a week from today. And then we have Boston a week from Saturday on the 11th. Okay, so St. George. Yeah, we're actually, when I was in Arizona, I met 2 guys who came to my private dinner from Vegas, and like they might help me set up an event there. And I'm considering doing an event in Vegas this summer or this fall. So that's probably gonna be the closest one to you. You guys, I don't think we're gonna be in Salt Lake this year, but in the Mountain West this summer, I'm probably gonna have ones in Colorado for sure, and in Vegas, and then we might have one in Portland, Oregon as well, and as well as other events in Southern California. We're definitely gonna have an event in San Diego, and a second one in Orange County, and a second one in LA and Santa Cruz. So yeah. In terms of events that are currently on the calendar, we have New York on Tuesday, April 14th. That is coming up. And those 3 stops will be Toronto, New York, and Boston. The last times I'm going to be in the Eastern time zone this year, as well as Atlanta, which will be the last time on the Eastern time zone on Thursday, April 23rd. And then we have Chicago on April 25th, which is a couple Saturdays from now. And then we have Dallas on the 30th. And then we have, last but not least, before I take a midsummer break, is we have Kansas City on the 3rd of May. And then we'll get started with the tour again in August with, I don't have the date set yet for all these, but Denver, Las Vegas, Santa Cruz, California, San Diego, and then repeats of LA and Orange County. And if there's enough demand, we'll also consider going up to Portland, Oregon. So those are that's what I have anticipated. And then in the end of the year, I'm probably going to come down to Texas again, either to Austin, Houston, or both. So who is my pick to win the Masters? I have no idea, honestly. I don't really watch golf. I like playing golf, but not watching golf. I think it puts you to sleep. Like my dad will literally watch the Masters or any PGA event when he wants to take a nap because it serves as a good sleep aid. Do you have a business email you could contact? Yes, I do. I will post like for YouTube related queries. It is afwithnick@gmail.com or askafundmanager@gmail.com, which is the one on this channel. Final 4 pick. I mean, I'd have to guess it's the Arizona Wildcats. I think are the most talented team remaining in the field. So I guess that will be my pick. But you also can really never count out UConn. I mean, Hurley's a great coach, and they just know how to win in these moments. Are you familiar with online directory business? Thoughts on them as a path to wealth? Like just creating like a listings for things to find. Like the answer could be, yeah. I mean, it's just about getting enough people to care about your directory and want to use it, and that it's information that is exclusive enough that people can't just use it to find online. Like there's a directory related service that I pay for my firm that's relatively affordable, but you usually can't just offer just a name and a phone number. It's usually directory businesses are more to serve filters. So like if I'm looking for a certain type of person and the directory helps me screen better. What are private equity firms doing that we can do to generate upper class wealth. I don't think they're really doing anything different. Like the private equity model was a wave of interest rates going down and being able to borrow and refinance at lower rates, or being able to sell things at higher multiples because of lower cap rates. I did a whole video about this. It's called Why Private Equity Lowers the Quality of Goods and Services, where I go into the economic model of private equity and why the golden days might be over for it. What are your thoughts on Calgary for young professionals? I went there last year for my brother's bachelor party in Banff, and we had a meetup after, and I had a fun time in Banff. It's like Canada's version of Yellowstone. I highly recommend visiting Banff. You could get really cheap flights from any Western Coast city or even some Midwestern cities to Calgary on WestJet. It's worth the trip. But I think it's on a relative basis, it's probably the most business friendly and the most young and high growth potential area in Canada, but it's also in Canada. Let's see. How to market to family offices. Not really. I mean, I don't know if I have like a very super good insight on. I need more time to think about. This is like a consultation type question, honestly. I do consultations on Calendly, like for people who have like want like more of my time and need like a paid hour to answer like a specific advice question that's not purely like can be handled by my wealth management business. That's what that's how you can contact me. I would need to do some more research or give me a good answer on that one. Do you think there'll be an AI or PE bubble burst? I mean, I think PE is at risk in private credit. My colleague Murphy just did a speech about private credit in San Francisco, which I will release maybe in like a month or two on the main channel. That goes into like how these busts work. And I did a whole survey, like analyzing the current risks and all that in a video I made in December. So if you want my full analysis on private credit, any curated event planned for Santa Cruz? Not yet. And if it did, it would have to be a different day than the main event because I have personal reasons why I'm in Santa Cruz, and I might do a lunch maybe before the main event. I don't think I can do a dinner that night. My schedule won't permit. But if there's enough people who would want it, reach out and let me know. I didn't think there'd be that much demand for a curated event in Santa Cruz because it's a fairly small city and it's a pretty significant drive from San Francisco, and I can't do it on the same day as the event. So that's my take on that. Is the manosphere content prol content? I agree with certain things in the manosphere, but I don't think I can form a genuine connection with women now. I've learned too many things I shouldn't have. I think it's feminism for men, a lot of what manosphere is. And the manosphere made some good points, particularly in the 2010s when the mainstream was just too blue-pilled, for a lack of a better term. But if you get too far down that rabbit hole, it will destroy your ability to trust other people. And you're just assuming the worst in all things, and that will sour your relationships. So I think it kind of is because at this point, it has become more of a prol type of content because it's just grievances and people complaining like, oh, and same with black pill content I put in this category. Like, oh, everything is against me. Like I need somebody to just kind of speak about what's it called? Like my grievances and tell me that the world is unfair and rigged against me. So I feel better about myself. So yeah. And somebody asked me about turkey. I mean, I've talked to my guy who does my hair and I've looked at myself in the mirror and I don't think I need it at this point. There might be a time that changes, but for now, I think I'm fine with my current hair. Let's see. In Boston, you'll be visiting soon. What's a typical head count for curated events? It's usually about 5 to 10 people for the curated events in Boston. So me plus 4 to 9 other people. Yeah, like it's a lot, and they're usually very, very interesting perspectives. I usually have, if you want to come, I recommend filling out the Curate Experience application because I just like to know a little bit more about everybody before agreeing to have like a dinner. And these generally go very long because the conversations generally last way longer than the actual dinner. And I don't plan anything after. So like my whole evening after the event, I spend hanging out with you guys at the private dinners. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Good morning. Yeah. I noticed with these live streams, the European audience tends to not see me because the time zone that's best for my main audience, which is in the United States, tends to be very bad for European audiences. So I appreciate you being up early and watching me from the other side of the pond. Let's see. I'm going to scroll and see other questions. How long have I been? That's 2.5 hours. I think I'll have about 30 minutes more on the live stream before I'll call it and make some dinner. So feel free to ask your questions and either leave a super chat or ask them more recently because, again, questions get lost, especially with all the comments that we've got. This has been a more lively live stream, and I appreciate you guys all being on here. But yeah, that's so I'm. Would you encourage your kids to do for a social class, Ivy League or entrepreneurial? And if entrepreneurial, would you guide them to specific sectors, let them pick? I would. It's ironic because most people in the independent classes try to push their kids to be in the Ivy League path because it's perceived as more safe. And usually parents want what is safe, even if they didn't choose that path themselves. Whereas I would actually pursue them to be more entrepreneurial because I think that the 40 years in a golden watch is dead. And if you can build a stable base of clients, being an independent professional and building those habits to be willing to adapt with the times will make you much more safe and give you also much more of a right tail for upside in the event that you want to try to go for counter elite gold. So I would actually pursue more entrepreneurship. I'd let them do what they want, but I would make sure that there's minimum viable product and minimum demand for a product. Like you don't want to do a field of dreams entrepreneurship where you build something and nobody wants it. I will have to make sure I'm very cognizant of the realities of supply and demand. So that's kind of my take on that. What is the best way to study academic study, finance, and economics without pursuing a degree? You can read the CFA level 1 curriculum and do the CFA program. Even like that's probably the best way if you want like the more academic side knowledge. Others, you can just read a lot of books. There's tons and tons of books on finance. You can watch my live stream I did for the 100K subscriber special about all the recommended books on my shelf back here. Or you can watch like my iceberg series as a primer and then just search those terms and do deeper dives. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat. Did you ever talk about the end game of pearl drift? Does the general population become so poor to live like most African countries do now? What's the equilibrium point? No, I've not done a video about that, but I'm also not that pessimistic like that. Basically, I think that, and also because of AI and the growth of the welfare state and UBI's potential implant, I think you might have birth rate spreads between certain classes and not in the way that you think that might be the ultimate end game of pearl drift, that basically only anti-pearl people are the only ones. The pearls will just stop having children, might be the end game for a variety of reasons. But I haven't really thought about it too hard. I don't think that like you're going to see just a total collapse on that point of view, but it is something to think about. Let's see. Thank you for the stream. Thank you for sharing time with us. Hey, I passed CFA level 2. That's the hardest one. Took me 2 tries for that. Congratulations. Did you say you are engaged or getting married soon? Yeah, I got engaged last summer, but I didn't really announce it on the channel until my live stream in February. So yeah, I married sometime this summer. I'm not going to give an exact date, and I'm not going to post my registry because that would be a pro to do. What are your thoughts on techno feudalism? Does it exist? Are we already in it or about to enter in it? Um, I think that I've read Giannis's writings on this topic. I don't really follow that many left wing economists, but he's probably one of the I find to be the most interesting. Him and David Graeber are probably the I would say so. Um, and yeah, what's it called? So I think that it doesn't quite exist to the degree that people think. Like maybe in the content creator, if you just did only the content creator economy or something like that, yeah, that could be a thing because they're overly reliant on their platforms to survive. But I think there's enough of the physical economy that is outside of it. And I think AI is disrupting. It's like the equivalent of techno gunpowder to the old walls of the big tech companies in a way. So I don't think techno feudalism is going to end up playing out the way it's feared. But um, do you meet pros in a professional environment despite their eventual credentials and so-called education? Yeah, all the time. And you can tell just by what they look, what their hobbies. Yeah, and there are plenty of them in white collar professions. Um, so yeah, it does happen. It's not just a lower class thing. You could have a very high income and have a lot of pro sensibilities. Um, Proposing to her boyfriend a form of prole drift. No, I think that the man not making a decision quick enough that forces her to do that is more of the prole drift. I think it's a response to prole drift. Like usually, what's it called? What's it called? That happens because a guy doesn't commit within a certain period of time, or the woman is being irrational about how short. Like if something for it depends on the time. Like if a girl proposes to her husband in less than 2 years of dating, that's probably a red flag in the sense that he doesn't he hasn't figured you out long enough. But if it's like 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 years and that happens, that's a sign of the pearl drift of the man. He should either make the decision to break up or get married by then. That's my take on it. Like, I understand, like, not everybody's the one, and it takes time to figure it out. But at a certain point, um, I proposed myself. That is a question I'm not going to get into too many details of my romantic life or because I don't, but out of privacy, but that's one I will. Yeah, of course, I was the one who proposed. That's what men are supposed to do. Um, but maybe that's offensive nowadays, but to say that, but that's my view on it. Is a woman being a breadwinner prole? No, I don't necessarily think that is. A lot of women, unfortunately, never have the chance to get married, so they need to build the skills that they could be self-sufficient. Sometimes things happen, like maybe their husband is disabled for some reason, physically or mentally, due to like something out of your control, whether disease or a physical accident or something like that. Sometimes also you see with a lot of high income, dual income couples, which I think is a really smart, is you have the woman with a more stable job that pays the bills at the moment. And then you have the husband doing an entrepreneurial risky venture that provides the right tail upside to get into successful business owner or counter elite territory. And that right tail may not make money for a long time or years, but but if that does take off, then the whole family gets richer in the long run. So like if I was to have a dual income household, that's the way you set up. You have one partner do the entrepreneurial risky thing, and then you have the other spouse have a more safe job that provides like health insurance and like a floor for your living standard while the other person is building themselves up. So the answer is no. Um, yeah, let's see. Is being obsessed with EDM concerts and Burning Man and all that prole drift? Um, I would not say EDM is prole drift. In fact, really, but I'm be biased because EDM is actually my favorite genre of music personally. So, um, But I think that Burning Man is a very accurate sign of somebody's character or interests, and it is very correlated with a lot of pro values and lifestyle habits. Like I remember back when I was single, and one of the questions I would ask on first dates is, "What are your thoughts on Burning Man?" Because it's a way to learn a lot about somebody without directly asking them certain questions. So if you're single out there and you want to learn about um, a woman or a man's personality and interests and values in a relatively quick proxy, ask them what their thoughts on Burning Man is. And some people who are in line with the Burning Man lifestyle will think that's a great answer if it's yes, and others who are not will know that's time to move on fairly quickly. I mean, rap music can be pro drift, but it also I've heard of certain rap tracks that are not pro. So Um, was Jesus pro? No, I do not think Jesus was pro. He was from a working class background, but that's not the same. And let's see. I mean, Burning Man is considered bad to certain social circles because it's associated with certain lifestyle choices that a lot of people do not like. It's very bohemian in the conventional sense, and it's very new agey in other ways, and is associated with certain vices that turn off a lot of others. I'm trying to put it diplomatically. Um, but yeah. Uh, but do you think it's worth for somebody to trying to move to a higher social class to move to a higher cost of living access networking with the upper class people to stay in lower cost living and save? It depends how big. If it's like a small town of less than 50,000 people and not like a suburb of a big city, but like a small town with the whole metro area less than 50,000 people, yeah, you might need to move. But in general, it's easier to build off of an existing social and family network than it is to start one from scratch. Unless if you're working in a profession that's heavily concentrated in a single industry, it may not always make sense. Actually, that's what my speech in Dallas is going to be about. I'm going to talk about this very topic. Like, when does it make sense to move to another city or another state for economic reasons? Because this is a question I get asked a lot. And if you want the full answer to that, come see me in Dallas. I'll eventually release it on YouTube too, but you could come see me in Dallas. And then for those who want to keep updated on the events or my videos or other things, check out my Substack. Um, yeah, like, what is Glastonbury? I've never heard of that. I thought that's just the name of a town. Um, but I don't know. Let's see. Are tattoos the most obvious? I mean, they're the most visually obvious. Tattoos, certain hairstyles, lifted trucks. If you don't live in a rural area, um, just like a certain vulgar vibe are kind of the most obvious ones. But there are plenty of others that you take that are not as obvious. I mean, um, let's see. I don't think an interest in space exploration is pro. That's kind of, I think, that's progress. I don't think space is pro at all. I don't know. Where do you get that idea? I'm curious. Let's see. Do pros in the educate? All right, I got a super chat. Thank you. Are there any economic newsletters you see worth the subscription price that you pay or free ones? Would you share some of those macro newsletters you see insightful? I mean, there's a lot of them I read. I did do a live stream about that where I went through all of them last year with the full details. Um, but like in terms of paid newsletters, I mean, Grant's Interest Rate Conservator is a good one, I would say. Um, I think like if you have the budget for it, BCA is really good, but it's very pricey. So I don't think your average person is going to be at a BCA research subscription. Um, I think that FT is good, and the Wall Street Journal, like FT is like the center left financial newspaper. Wall Street Journal is the center right financial newspaper. Um, Yeah, I mean, if you care about mutual funds, mutual fund observer is useful if you invest in mutual funds. Um, and yeah, I mean, there are some that are entertaining reads. Like I think like Daily Dirt Nap is a good one, and Tony Greer's TG Macro for more shorter term trading. But I don't really read as much Dirt Nap myself because Jared Dillion's mindset is often similar to mine in a lot of ways. So it'd be more of a confirmation bias. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know. But those are some examples. There's probably more. And so if I forgot one, um, it's not because it's bad. It's just it's not off the top of my head. Um, I think the prol drift is a combination for a catch-all for bad behavior, even if it doesn't have a class valence. Yeah, it is to a certain degree. I mean, there are things that aren't considered bad behavior that are also prol drift, but it can also apply to that to a certain degree. Do you drink? If so, could you drink live and tell us about prols? I do not drink alcohol personally. I've never really had much of an interest in it, and it's not. I never had a problem with anything. I just didn't really like it that much to begin with. I could count probably the number of drinks I've had on my life in like both on my hands. It's just not something I've been into that much, and it's not really something I want to start getting into because it's not really particularly good for my health. Um, and the thing is that the upside may be like me socially and maybe financially to get into wine because that is like usually not a pro drift thing is being in like the wine scene and all that, but it's just not my cup of tea. I probably get more offered more free drinks than anybody in the world to a certain degree because I don't drink is the irony of it. Um, but let's see. How to use AI in your personal, professional YouTube life. I use it a lot. I use Descript to do my editing of my videos. I use GPT, Grok, and Claude for various AI applications. Claude is particularly powerful. I started using recently, and I think I can. There's a lot of potential of other things I can do, and probably I need to build a Claude bot one of these days to maximize its potential. I use it to help with research. I use Perplexity to help with research as well, but I always make sure it shows me the sources because you can't the hallucination rate is too high to trust it for verbatim. And yeah, and I use it to help me solve certain random life questions that I would stuff I used to Google search or look at Reddit or Yahoo Answers back in the day for. I have now replaced that with LLMs and AI too. And then I use 11 Labs for AI voices, like for my quotes at the beginning of the videos. And yeah, there's a lot of other things I use it for. I'm a very strong believer that you need to embrace AI technology if you want to move up in the world in the modern era. And those who don't will be left behind. Um, let's see. Um, is voting prole? Why would voting be prole? Maybe universal suffrage creates prole outcomes, but I don't think the act of voting is prole. Um, what's it called? Can Brole drift also apply to behaviors of high socioeconomic people being adopted by lower class people? That's more democratization. That's when things that used to only be accessible to the rich move down and become more accessible to everybody because technology usually makes it more affordable. Like the example, this would be like tourism and international travel used to be something only the wealthy could do. Um, but then when airfare became more affordable, other classes of people were able to afford to go on airplanes. Like in the 60s and the 70s and in the 80s, it was a status symbol to have ever been on a flight. Now it's just a routine thing. And there are several other examples of this kind of democratization. Like it used to be a luxury until the 1960s to drink orange juice. It used to be a very expensive thing that only wealthy people regularly consumed. And now orange juice is considered cheap drink. So that's democratization. That's what the inverse of pearl drift is. Um, let's see. Dead or alive, who would you have dinner with? What are the choices? Is selling antiques pearl? No, it's not. So yeah. Is Christianity pearl? No, it's not. It's been a civilizing force in all of history. When societies who were previously pagan embraced Christianity, they ascended in terms of their civilizational development, not descended. So if that is the case, it cannot be pearl. And I'm not even going into the religious arguments there. Is climbing Mount Everest pearl? No. Why would that be pearl? Do you think marriages between institutional professional class and business owner risky types can be successful, or are the differences ethics too much? I think they can be successful as long as the person in the professional class maybe grew up in a family of business owners or can tolerate the fact that the other person may not be making the same amount of money as them for a period of time, and they can see the long-term vision, like, and have high agency themselves. Like if there's somebody like an MBA student who wants to marry an MBA student so they can have a certain lifestyle that they couldn't afford by themselves, they would not tolerate that. Hey, I'm back. I don't think it was an internet issue. I think it was some reason YouTube wasn't able to receive data for, I don't know what it was early. So I am back. I wasn't going to leave early. Leaving early without an Irish goodbye on a stream would be pearl drift. If you want my opinion on Protestantism versus Catholicism, come to one of the events. I'll talk about it there. That's probably, I get a little bit too politically incorrect and don't want to turn this into analyzing finance, analyzing theology with Nick. Let's see. But I don't know, where did I cut off? I'm lost my train of thought. What was I talking about before I got shut out? Oh yeah, the MBA people. Okay, so it's like these MBA students or MBA graduates who try to marry somebody of the same level of income that they are. Am I muted? Can you hear me now? All right. Okay. All right. So I'm back. So, yeah, I mean, people who marry somebody just because they want the dual income to live a more bougie lifestyle than they could otherwise. I don't, especially if you're a man doing, I can understand maybe if you're a woman doing that because one day your income's probably going to go down when you take care of kids. But if you're a man doing that, that is pearl drift. Like men should not be counting on a second income, like, or planning their life around a second income. Like, maybe if they're taking the entrepreneurial route, but that's like a strategic choice to do that. But like, but marrying somebody for that particular reason, I think is I have nothing against two income families, but if that's your main target, that's a problem, honestly. And like you should like that's I mean, but maybe I'm more traditional in that way. Um, like men should want to take care of their families and be leaders financially, or they have their family like a business and you treat it that way where you have again the husband or the doing the upside potential and the wife having the stable job or vice versa depending on your situation. I've met couples in both circumstances. So yeah, that's kind of my take on that whole thing. Sorry if I was going on a little bit of a rant. Um, is there a population under an authoritarian regime pro drift? No, because um, they can't control most of the time that they're in an authoritarian regime. So, yeah, Ray Dalio did marry a Vanderbilt. Um, what products do proles love? Lifted trucks would be one. Um, like or pickup trucks when they don't actually need to use the bed for anything. I know I'm like I would say they also like um, a lot of other things. Watch my whole prole drift video about that. Um, let's see. Yeah, it's like short-term thrill. They like short-term thrills at the expense of their long-term health and well-being, or at their long, or maybe their financial help or thing. I don't think a prenup is prole drift. Prenups make sense if there is a sizable gap in assets, or there are specific assets you don't want to be forced to liquidate going into a marriage. Like if you have about the same level of income and similar levels of assets, it doesn't make sense to do a prenup. But if you like start a business or you own like millions of dollars worth of properties and the other person doesn't have anything in it, then it makes more sense. So it's a circumstantial thing. Um, yeah, I would say popular culture memorabilia would probably be a Pearl Drift product too, generally. Um, especially if it has no historical value. Um, how did me and my fiance meet? I met on a dating app originally, but like I'm not going to go into more details than that. Um, let's see. Do you think interest rates in Europe are going down on the long end? Which would boost the housing market? Only go down if inflation drops and growth slows enough that warrants it. And Europe is a lot less resistant to energy. Is a lot more sensitive to energy prices than America, because America is a net exporter of energy, whereas Europe has to import its energy, and they're losing their natural gas source as well as their crude oil source at the Strait of Hormuz. So, yeah. Um, let's see. Do you have an impression there are less good books these days than 10 or 20 years ago? Do you mean novels or nonfiction? Um, I think that is there's less good movies these days. There's probably less good novels these days, but there's probably not. Actually, there's probably a lot of good independent content that you haven't heard of, but like stuff from the mainstream publishers, yeah, there's probably less good quality stuff from the mainstream publishers, whether that's books, movies, videos, any sort of cultural media, especially because like YouTube and social media and other things have gotten so competitive, and there's so much stuff out there that it's impossible to find everything. And probably a lot of great creators of all kinds of things are getting lost in the weeds. Like, I mean, nobody watched this channel for 3 years. So, yeah. How do you think countries will look 50 years from now when population collapse occurs? I think that means smaller countries with higher levels of education and tech will be the world powers. Population size won't determine whether you're a global power or not. It will be based on how well as your country have embraced technology, and how like well educated and skilled your population is. It'll be kind of like example of like when Europe colonized the rest of the world in the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, because now they weren't necessarily had more people. They had a lot less people often than the countries they colonized, but they had a technological advantage, which made them the world powers of the day. So I think that's so. I think you'll see countries like, I think that would be powers would be like Poland. Um, you'll have Switzerland. The Netherlands, if they don't tax their society to death. The US, of course. I think China and the US will still be powers, but Singapore, Israel, like smaller countries with a lot of technological and human capital are kind of going to be the future. Um, do you plan on writing a book? I've already written 3 books personally. Um, will I write the next one when I have time? I quite frankly don't have time. Like I've intended to write a book about the young man guides to his 20s and 30s this year, but it's just not in the cards. Like there's other too many other things I'm doing in my life right now, but I would like to write that one before I turn 40 ideally, so I don't write it from an out of touch perspective. Um, so yeah. Um, let's see. How are we doing on time? Where can you find the books? Well, you can find them on Amazon. 2 of them I've written under my own name. One I've written under a pen name. Um, because but they're there. Are baby boomers prole? No, there are prole baby boomers and there are classy baby boomers and in between. I don't think there's like a whole generation is prole. Um, but I think that I think I'm let's see. I don't really want to I'm going to drink some water and I'll take like 5 to 10 more questions and then I'm done. Because my voice is starting to go out. But yeah, and also my books that I wrote were mostly when I was in college or fresh out of school, so they're not really the best reading. They're probably not the best quality books in retrospect, but I did write them. My last name is Pardini. Um, so yeah, it's Italian. Let's see. We need a prole book. I'm probably not the one to write that book. Um, is being Italian prole? No, it's not. There are some Italian Americans who display certain stereotypes, but in general, I'd say Italian Americans are less pro than Italian Italians at this point, to be quite honest. Um, yeah, will high culture ever become mass culture, or are the two destined to be separate forever? I think mass culture is just dying. Is there really a mass? Maybe this is a sign of my age, or me that I live in or under a rock when it comes to popular culture. But is there really a mass culture? I can't name any of the Billboard top 40. So, um, I can maybe name 5 actors in Gen Z. I don't even think I can name 5. I think I maybe name like 2 or 3. Like there it's there's I think that mass culture was a product of boomers and Gen X. Like the internet has democratized culture and media to a degree that there really isn't a mass culture anymore. Before the boomers, the thing that pushed the mass culture was basically civic pride and religion. And now as America's become a more religiously diverse country, that was replaced with popular culture for one generation who grew up watching all the same stuff because there wasn't many TV channels, there was no internet. It was all like a few gatekeepers pushing the same things, but that era is done unless if somehow we have an authoritarian regime that really cracks down on new and independent media. Um, but yeah, I don't think there is a mass culture anymore. So I think there'll still be a high culture, but even the mainstream high culture has been ruined by woke politics to a certain degree to the point that there's a lot of pro drift in high culture. Like the example is putting like duct taping a banana to a wall is considered multi-million dollar art. That's pro drift of high culture. Or like seeing like or like some of like the tacky themes of a lot of modern Broadway shows I would consider to be pro drift. Like so I think high culture has been infected with pro drift that it's not really that elegant anymore, unfortunately. Um, and yeah, what do you what do you enjoy and what is ugh about YouTube creation? What I enjoy about YouTube creation is getting all my ideas out there and like talking to you guys through the comments and these live streams, and the tour has been really enjoyable too. And yeah, and doing the research for the content is probably really enjoyable, learning about all these things. Stuff that's not enjoyable is back end stuff, which is I'm trying to automate or hire out as fast as I can, whether that's editing, or making thumbnails or all that kind of stuff. Also dealing with comments that I think are in bad faith, that's not enjoyable, um, as well. But on the net, I think YouTube is quite enjoyable, honestly. Um, let's see. Yes, I think on the net, Las Vegas is a pearl drift travel destination. I actually did a whole, if you want to go into pearl drift and travel, I did a whole video about all the pearl drift travel destinations around the world. I called it Pearl Drift Tourism, Tacky Trips for a Shrinking Middle Class. And I go through the whole world and show you all those destinations. Um, let's see. Um, it was one of my favorite videos to make because I love intersecting the maps into videos. Is America more pro than Europe in general? You're asking me questions I've already answered in previous videos. I did a video about pearl drift in different countries already. Um, and and basically the answer is maybe in terms of aesthetic and consumer culture, America's more pearl drift, but in terms of like how people live and how their system is institutionalized, I think Europe is more pearl drift. Um, any advice on reinventing yourself? Well, it depends on your own situation. Like, do you have what kind of budget do you have to reinvent yourself? Did you sell your business? Did you lose your business? Are you starting from scratch economically? Do you have a family? Are you single? Like, where do you live? There's I mean, if you're a single person with some money to spend and not much commitment, just move to a new city that is more in line with the type of person you want to be. That's the easiest way to reinvent yourself. And you'll be forced to reinvent yourself by adapting to a new environment. For other situations, the answer is a lot more complicated. Um, every 40 years in the last 3 centuries, we've seen a religious revival within America. I think we're already starting. Like, look at like the number of like people applying for OCIA, which is Catholic initiation, is like at multi-decade highs right now. It's especially among like the intellectual but still kind of conservative leaning people moving to more high churches away from either evangelical Protestantism or secular atheism has become already a trend. So, yeah. Um, see my as Passport Bro Prol, see my video debunking the doomer on Passport Bros, and you'll get the answer for that. Is modern feminism prol? Um, in certain ways it can be. I think it's a product of men not having enough money to a certain degree, but I don't think it's entirely pro. I think there are other forces going on with feminism, but there are some pro elements that feminist ideology is used as an excuse for people to. I think feminism is the excuse that a lot of pro behaviors use as their basis for existing, but it might not be pro in itself. If you know, if that's clear. Um, do you see the values of pro tied to some objective metric? No, this is a very subjective analysis, to be quite honest. And it goes back to what I said at the beginning of this live stream. Is it something if everybody did it, would the world be a better or worse place? Two, is it something people do because they genuinely want to do it, or they're coping because they can't do what they actually want to do? Or and three, is it a long vol decision or is it a short vol decision? What options does a college grad who can't get a job have to become less pro? I mean, you upskill yourself so that you find a niche in the economy, whether by getting it, whether it's through being hired by somebody else or building your own business. Um, yeah. Is Novus Ordo Prol? No, it's not. I personally prefer it over TLM. I don't think the vernacular is the problem with Vatican II. And the more I learn about Vatican II, I think the problem more with Vatican II is not Vatican II itself, but how it was interpreted and enforced by the upper church bodies. But that would be a whole nother, that's more of an analyzing theology with Nick conversation. Maybe I should do a meetup if I ever go back to Rome, or maybe I should make the Milan meetup this theme, just like the analyzing theology with Nick meetup, where it's like a theological issues. Maybe I should do, that's another thing I thought. Maybe I should do meetups that specialize in specific topics. They're kind of like councils where smart people of given topics discuss a certain thing and try to come up with new solutions to multi-generational problems. I generally think one thing that we should have more in Christianity is we should have more ecumenical councils. Like, I think if we really, a lot of these denominational leaders really got into a room and hammered things out and tried to resolve their differences in good faith, we could have more church unity through some new version of the Council of Nicaea or something. That's kind of one of my ideas. That's something I think that is overdue and needs to be done. We need a new ecumenical council, but I think the problem is there's too much ego within the leadership of many church denominations to ever see that happening. Um, do you think modern restaurants with labor automation will become increasingly profitable with capital expenditure investments? Yeah, because labor is one of the main cost centers for restaurants by far, and the increased amount of benefits. And a lot of restaurant workers tend to have disproportionate amount of political power for a variety of structural reasons. So they end up able to vote themselves disproportionate more protections than they should be able to otherwise, which makes restaurants very high risk and very low margin. But the thing is, I think what ultimately would happen is, let's just say restaurants become more profitable because of automation. They'll pass on those cost savings to the consumers. And I think it'll just become more affordable to go out to eat. Like going out to eat as an example of democratization, like going to a restaurant, particularly a sit down restaurant, used to be something only the wealthy could afford. And I noticed this starting in the late 90s and the 2000s, where previously when I was younger, going out to eat was a very limited special occasion. But then as my family got older and restaurants have gotten cheaper relative to other things, going out to eat became a more frequent thing. Like instead of maybe like a once every month to 3 month thing, it maybe became a once every 2 week occasion, maybe even weekly in certain weeks. And so that, I think, and as I've, especially as I've gotten older now as an adult in my 30s, going out, there's probably rarely 1 week that I go entirely without going out to eat. So that is an example of a democratization. And I think if automation came in and made restaurants more less labor focused, I think it ultimately would be since anybody can start a restaurant as low barriers to entry, it'll ultimately result in lower prices for diners. That's definitely on that. Uh, yeah. Let me see. Did I miss? Do you generally think it's a good idea to pay off the house early if you can? Um, is the opportunity cost be less than investing in the market? It depends on what the interest rate on your mortgage is, net of tax benefits. It's there's a like if you have a high interest rate mortgage and you're not getting that much tax savings from it, it could make sense to pay it off. If you have a very low mortgage, it doesn't make sense to pay it off. So it's a context. But I think from it's not really a purely financial situation. It's a personal situation. Like you have to quantify how much it means to have the peace of mind that you don't owe anybody any money. Like even if it's a suboptimal economic and tax decision, it might just be a better decision to pay it off from a personal perspective because you don't have to worry about having a mortgage. And then maybe you could start a business and quit your job earlier because you have a lot lower of a burn. So you have to think about it from a variety of perspectives. Um, yeah. Capitalism gives you 36 flavors of ice cream, but 2 political parties. Well, the 2 political party systems is the product of how our government is structured. That's not a capitalist thing. Like the first past the post system leads to default 2-party system. If you had a more proportional voting, then you would have room for a multi-party system. I think like I would like a multi-party system in an ideal world, and you didn't vote for candidates; you just voted for party, um, and coalitions would be built that way. But America was kind of one of the first democracies, so it had a more rudimentary view of representative democracy. But maybe I should do a live stream about how I would reform representative democracy and democracy in general. I am not anti-democracy, but I'm anti the current form of democracy. I think there are certain reforms that can be made to fix it. The problem is I think that video might be too controversial for YouTube. So, is increased poll drift a consequence of democracy? Yeah, I think somewhat. I think they are somewhat related, but not purely perfectly correlated. But yeah, is drinking alone a sign of pearl drift? No, I think it's a sign of a very stressful life, or not having enough friends or family who live close by, or depression. I don't think it's pearl necessarily. How business is different between US and Europe for you? I mean, it's a lot harder for me to try to do business in Europe than the US. Like, yeah, I've thought about expanding my company out there, but it's very prohibitive from a compliance and regulatory and cost perspective to do so. Um, so that probably answers that question. What about spending money and getting high-end education but belonging from the floor class at this AI era? I mean, that's bad planning. That's precariat right there. I mean, there's no excuse if you have a good quality education to, um, what's it called, to not move up. But I mean, I think that investing in education is a classic way people from lower class backgrounds provide multi-generational upward mobility. That's kind of the template. And so I don't think it's different now. What silly things make it hard to be an entrepreneur? I'm doing a video about this. It's my live stream. That's my speech I did in Seattle. I'm releasing it to members right after this stream, and it's going to go to the public on Easter. So if you want to know more about that, watch my video I did about why America is the best place to be an entrepreneur coming out this weekend. Would Pearl still be such a big issue if Americans became more isolationist around the 1970s? Yeah, because I don't think isolationism versus the interventionist foreign policy is what caused the structural problems of our economy. I did a whole video about the liberal international order like 2 years ago, which is kind of why America does the interventions it does and how your average citizen actually benefits from it and who wins and who loses. And I think it will change your mind a lot about this kind of thing. Because I used to be a very hardcore anti-interventionist, and I still have that bias to a certain degree. But after understanding how the liberal international order actually benefited my life as an individual, it makes me a little bit more sympathetic for the US's role as a dominant power in the world than I used to be. You shouldn't try to be a surgeon physician for the money. Like, again, it's also very difficult to get on the time opportunity cost. Only do it if you're legitimately passionate about surgery. And I don't really know what your heart deep down the passions are for that, but that's my take on that. What's your advice for a 24-year-old? For what? I mean, that's a good question. I think you have to find the intersection of where your passion meets demand in the marketplace and what you're good at. Anything that fits in that circle is what's the key to breakout success. Like, because if you don't have any sort of enthusiasm for what you're doing, you will bore out, you will burn out and end up in the precariat. That's the problem of doing something just because it makes sense from a stable point of view. It could also explain a lot of other social phenomenons in this country that I would talk about on a future meetup live because it's a little bit controversial for this. Um, let's see. I think at this point, I'm going to wrap up this live stream. I've gone almost 3.5 hours now, and I'm losing my voice. So thank you guys all for joining me. And I look forward to the next 2 weeks about the economics of nostalgia. And if you also, if you want to come in person, come to one of my meetups. We're doing them in Boston, Toronto, New York, Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, and Kansas City, all in the next 30 days. I would love to see you guys all there. And if you'd like to help me set up my international tour next year, feel free to vote on where I should go, or if help me build a system that can take on pre-reservations in a way that puts people financially committed but doesn't have me bill them before the event is confirmed. And also, if you want to keep following me, follow me on Substack for updates on videos and events and other things that we're doing. And if you want to contact me directly with specific questions, feel free to schedule a consultation. But yeah, I got to get going. And yeah, I thank you guys all for watching, and I enjoyed doing this live stream.